everybody. You are listening to the History Boys. As usual, I am Christopher Whedon, and I am a history boy. And we're here to tell you a story. Isn't that right, next history boy?
Insert history boy here. Hey, folks, this is Tyler, Big Bad Bing Bong History Boy here. Excited to bathe in the deja vu.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. But I will say that it's very clear that I don't plan what I'm saying before I do my, opening.
And I am Jerry Nash, your humble history boy, as always. Thank you so much for listening. And this is our November episode, gang. Mm-hmm. The one we do in November. Sorry it's coming out a little bit late. But
it was supposed to be a Thanksgiving feast, but it's more like the even better leftovers that you have after Thanksgiving.
There you go. There you go. We hope you all had a good Thanksgiving.
And an excellent Cyber Monday.
Yeah.
Yes. God, do people still stand in line and trample people on
that? And
on Black Friday?
I feel like Black Friday has now become a 4 or 5 day thing where you just order things cheaper online.
Yeah.
Cyber Monday is just now also Black Friday.
It gives boomers a chance to mace each other inside of a fucking Walmart. Mm-hmm. Everybody else is just ordering shit online, I think. I don't know.
Yeah,
so some people are still doing it. Some people are still
Yeah, those are fucking Luddites who... They're like, yeah. I wish I could mace somebody inside of a Walmart every day of the year. Yeah. This is my one opportunity.
So they must like getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to a store and then fight somebody for an Elmo toy.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Me and my wife have given a lot of money to the success of Amazon because I don't want to fucking leave the house. The product that they would give, the 2-day shipping, I love all that. It's just inherent capitalism run amok that I have an issue with.
Yes. Well, anyway, this episode doesn't have anything to do with really November. Mm-hmm. Maybe Thanksgiving. Thank God you're not there. At this time.
Well, it does have at least attempted genocide in it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Which is a cornerstone for Thanksgiving for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this time, gang, we're talking about the Siege of Jerusalem. And that's in the year 70 CE. 70 CE. Now, the Siege of Jerusalem took place as the decisive sort of battle during the First Jewish Uprising that was in 66 CE and ending in 70 CE. It wouldn't be the first time Jerusalem fell during a siege, and it wouldn't be the last. However, fallout from this particular siege and from this war pretty much affects us in a lot of crazy ways today and has really affected intrinsic things about our society. Mm-hmm. It's one of those seminal moments, gang. One of those seminal moments.
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I'm not looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to the siege. I'm looking forward to the story of the siege.
The knowledge, it becoming, part of your brain and...
really getting in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Changing the way you think on things.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's a couple of groups that we need to know about before we start this that are going to kind of come up, and I just kind of want you to know who they are real quick before we begin. Now, if you just sort of remember, this is sort of loosely tied to the last episode that Chris did on Hell. You're going to notice a lot of things sort of in common with that.
Yeah, I feel like I brushed on it briefly. I didn't want to talk about it too much just because I knew the inside track that you were doing this one next. So I was sort of like, here's a little teaser, gang. And I deliberately learned as little as possible on the subject, like I do with most things, so that I could learn today all about it.
Indeed. So let's just get into it, guys. First, before we actually do begin, though, I do want to acknowledge my sources. I went through multiple times. I went through For the Freedom of Zion by Guy McLean Rogers. Fantastic book. He really goes into the nuts and bolts on the historiography about it, you know, and all the sort of debates that exist within this story, because, you know, this has been hotly debated, and it'll sort of become apparent why once we get into it. And also, Dr. Henry Abramson, he has all these lectures. He's a Jewish historian on YouTube, actually, and they're all fantastic. They're all the ones pertaining to the subject matter, I should say, are all really good. Dude knows what he's talking about. He's dedicated his life to this type of shit, so there you go. Now, there are, you know, the Pharisees, and these are Christian terms, by the way. They don't appear in Jewish texts, although they're referring to Jewish sects, right, of people. The Pharisees, or Perushim, in Hebrew, meaning to split apart. They split apart from the Sadducees, which is the Christian term, which are basically, I believe it's Saduceum in Hebrew. They're the Zadokites, the followers of Zadok. Anyway, the Pharisees basically split away from the Sadducees, because the Pharisees basically believed that you didn't need the big temple in order to be, you know, a practicing, you know, Jew.
So were they like the tent revival?
Well, it's sort of. They didn't need like the big temple with the sacrifices, you know, and all that stuff.
Do they?
They could have their own. The Pharisee belief was also they believed in the oral Torah, because it was so they believed in sort of a decentralized Judaism.
Say that 5 times fast. Oral
say
Torah.
What?
Oral Torah.
Oral Torah. Yeah. Basically,
oral juror.
Yeah. Basically, what the oral Torah is like something, you know, this oral tradition of being passed down from generation to generation, basically interpreting what the actual Torah is, right? Because the Torah itself is just incomprehensible, right?
Yeah. It's the bagel that eats itself. You can cut that if you want. You can really cut that if you want. I'm sorry.
What do they call that snake that the Aurora?
Ouroboros.
Aurora Borealis.
Yeah. Ouroboros.
Localized within your kitchen.
Yeah.
And the, you know, Sadducees didn't believe in this oral tradition. You know, they were all about the temple. In that way, they were very Hellenized. You know what I mean? And the other Jewish sects were sort of going back to like the you know, fundamentalism, you know, and its roots. And so this seemed like it was very much of the enemy, you know what I mean? Yeah. Very Greek, very Hellenized, right? This idea that you would rally around a temple.
So were they like the big box guys, essentially, kind of like establishment? Basically, yeah. They controlled the temple. They were for peace with Rome and you know, the Greek people as well, because Judea, whoever the controller of Judea was would answer to the controller, the legate of Syria. This is all under Rome, right? You know, they would want to be in good with those guys in order to sort of keep their comfy position, right?
So Magneto wouldn't like these guys.
No, he wouldn't.
He's like, peace was never an option, as he's eating a bowl of spaghetti.
Yeah, to power up his mutant abilities. Yeah, that doesn't come from nowhere.
He's carbo loading to power up his mutant abilities, but I feel like I shouldn't have to explain that. That made perfect sense.
Everyone remembers the parts in the comics where Wolverine eats 7 loaves of bread before going on a mission in case he gets hurt.
Yeah. Power up his
mutant healing factor.
Mutant healing factor, you know?
Yeah. They also, you know, disagreed on a couple of other, you know, fundamental things like life after death, whether or not there was going to be a resurrection, you know, things like this. Sadducees didn't believe in a life after death or a resurrection or anything like that.
It's interesting from a modern lens to think of anybody, any religious people not believing in a life after. That's almost like an atheist thing, you know?
Right. Yeah.
They're it's like, oh, God's real, but he trashes your soul the second you're done.
Yeah.
Right.
Pray to him.
Yeah. Yeah. Make sure shit doesn't go wrong here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why the early Christians viewed the afterlife as a garbage pile. It just fucking Kobe's your soul right into the trash.
Yeah. It's literally like the end of Murder, She Wrote. God's typing on a typewriter, rips off the page, and throws it. It doesn't turn into a logo. It goes into the trash can. Let's all be real.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, she passed recently. Just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
And in that case, the guy pulls the page off, throws it, and it turns into Rest in Peace, Angel Lansbury.
Yeah.
I thought it would turn into a dove and like fly away.
No. Because Angela Lansbury famously believes that the soul dies with the body. So
Yeah.
She was quoted as saying that on Clickhole.
What do you think she's typing?
Yeah.
It's her manifesto.
There were a couple other groups as well. Like the Pharisees, they were a moderate sect. You know, they did believe in peace with Rome, you know, but they also disagreed basically that they needed a temple, you know, and then they had all these doctrine disputes as well. But then there were these super extreme zealots, and they were called the Zealots because they all believed in slightly different things, but they agreed on fundamental things, like we only accept one leader, one king, and it is our God.
Yeah.
We don't accept emperors. We don't accept kings. We only accept our God as our leader, as our king.
Yeah. And don't swim until 30 minutes after you eat.
So these are these guys like the Westboro Baptist Church of the time?
I mean, I would struggle to define the Westboro Baptist Church as moderate.
Okay. Yeah. Oh no. Well, I thought it was more because they're zealots. They're like they're a vocal minority with like maybe extreme beliefs for the time.
You're right. Moderates were the last guy. I fucked that up.
Yeah. That's fine.
I mean, yes, they're zealots. You know, in that way, in the fact that they're zealotous, they're zealots. Yeah. Judas of Galilee, not Judas Iscariot, but Judas of Galilee was he was the one that famously sort of proclaimed this, you know, idea, like the only real way to be Jewish, you know, is to not accept anyone other than your God as your leader. And
do you think he had an extra I don't know, chip on his shoulder because of his name? He was like, no, I'm not betraying God. I swear to God. Like, I swear to God. It's there happening.
Well, this was before Judas Iscariot would even enter the picture. Yeah. So even the historical Jesus, it would have been before then. This would have been around the time Pompey the Great took Judea for Rome. It would have been around that time.
Yeah. Pompey with his flowing
slightly
locks
after that.
and his perfect everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would have been around that time. And Judas was a very common name, as was Yeshua or Jesus. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It's like Adolf in Germany 100 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up with a fellow named Adolfo, you know, and he was a Mexican.
You're like, he was about 90 years old, had a very funny mustache.
No.
It wasn't quite the Mexican accent I would have expected. It sounded a little German, but
then again, I mean, that's what those guys do. And Chris, you can cut this if you want, but you know, they take the names like, okay, so you got Jesus, now you got Adolfo.
Yeah.
You got Chewy. They take them, repurpose them, add it to like really, really handsome guys that are gonna steal your girl.
Yeah.
And we just, you know, it's cool. They can have that. I'll give it to them.
It's like that kid I knew in high school, Chewbacca Gomez.
Yeah. Great mechanic, good in a fight. Big temper when he loses at table games. Yeah. I know.
He's got a Latin temper. Just like the real Chewbacca.
Boy, oh boy.
And then there were these other leaders that sort of sprang up that were in control of their own forces, right, of zealots, right? And it's sort of unclear as to how they relate to each other, if at all. I think they're just, you know, different armies, basically, of zealots, and they're distrustful of pretty much anyone else. You know what I mean? Everyone disagrees with each other extremely fervently. This is an incredible dark time in Jewish history because they're not only, going to fight Rome, but they're going to fight themselves a lot too. So one of these leaders is a guy named John of Gischala.
Okay.
John of Gischala, I'll kind of talk about him. He was in this place called Gischala, right? And when Vespasian, the Roman general, came and took it, he escaped back to Jerusalem. He's going to be one of the leaders of the zealots back in Jerusalem. Then we're gonna deal with Eleazar ben Simon, and his zealots control the temple. They thought if you controlled the temple, then you could control all of Jerusalem. Wasn't really so.
Yeah. If you control the
Simon
temple,
done that.
Yeah. And then there's the total badass, Simon Bar Giora, who was this kind of roguish leader of zealots that he led this peasant army, because most of these zealots, they're the lower class, middle to lower class.
Can I say it, guys? Can I say it?
Mm-hmm.
He'll give you more than you Biargiorian for. Sounded better in my
Biargiorian. Biargiorian.
More than you Biargin for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just say it really fast. It just kind of smooths it over. Anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Then we're going to deal with the procurators. These are basically the emperor's eyes and ears, in Judea and across the empire. In different times, they called them different things, but in this time, they called them procurators. So I'm going to call them procurators. So, Pontius Pilate, he was one of these. One of these guys.
Procure, but mostly taxes.
Yeah,
all taxes.
and he would do the things the emperor wanted him to do. You know. That's
Keep your hands very clean.
Yeah.
You don't want to spread COVID.
Yeah, indeed.
Is that why? I don't know. There's some story about him washing his hands. I feel like
yeah, it's symbolic. It's symbolic of him washing his hands of the situation.
No, I get that.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like, well,
I was gonna make a joke about him being a germaphobe.
Yeah, no, I was actually in a church play one time.
Nice.
And
were you Pontius Pilate?
No,
because that's great casting. I'm just gonna put that out there.
It was a noir thing, where there's a fast talking detective, and he was trying to figure out what happened to Jesus Christ's body. At the end of the at Easter, when he rises from the dead and stuff.
Was
and
this
so
a
it's
school thing?
No, it was
good.
So somebody was like, "Hey, do you want to be in a play for Easter?" And I was like, "I guess."
Yeah, fuck yeah.
And it ended up being a church thing, and I was like, "Fuck."
I don't know, if somebody came up to me and was like, "Do you want to be in a play for Easter?" I would assume it's a church thing.
I guess I don't know why I didn't put that
fucking Celtic
I don't know why
Easter,
I didn't put that together.
I like how I feel like there's a gradient of if somebody asked us to be in a play, how much we'd pretend we didn't want to be the center of attention for even 5 minutes. So
yeah, exactly.
But we're Jerry's yeah, I guess, and Chris is no, yeah, and I'm I'll go get my leotard. It's in my closet.
We're like the Always Sunny gang, where they're like, "Oh, I thought we'd be heavily involved in this."
Then we start wanting script rewrites.
But in that play, they played it as though he was a germaphobe. Anyway, yeah, it was very funny.
That's great. That's a solid gag. I
think it's a worthwhile tangent too.
Yeah, it's a solid gag. But the procurator we're going to deal with is Florus, fellow by the name of Florus. He has a longer name than that, but we're going to call him Florus.
Yeah, it's and the machine.
Yeah, there you go.
The machine are the guys he brings with him.
Florence Ben-Hur machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about the kings of Judea, because King Herod the Great, he was he was like control over this. He had control over this big area, and when he died, they busted up his kingdom into the smaller pieces.
Yeah, it's like Crusader Kings.
Yeah,
Before
in
you
order to
get
make
the,
sure.
like,
Yeah, you're not so powerful.
Yeah, when you have the earlier rule where it's like, oh, your king died, now all your shit's split up, and you're like, God damn it, I shouldn't have spread so far.
Exactly. Yeah. So, the crown would be passed several times. We mentioned Agrippa the First, who succeeded King Herod the Great. Agrippa the First, of course, was friends with Caligula. If you remember, he kind of he grew up with him. He went to prison one time. He's kind of an interesting guy.
Now, I think that being friends with Caligula would be a precarious place to be.
Oh, yeah.
In one sense, I feel like you're like, I'm in with the guy. But, like,
it's still
you do
precarious.
one thing wrong, you look at his fucking bald-ass head from up above, and you're fucking fucked. You're like, shit, I didn't know you were down there, little boots.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we have Agrippa II, who is going to be ruling, so to speak, in Judea.
Is it the first one's boy?
The first one's a boy?
No, it's that Agrippa the First's boy.
Yes.
Is his son.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Okay.
He gets a bad rap in the Bible,
Yeah.
He works with Rome. He answers, again, to the legate of Syria. He definitely is on Rome's side, you know what I mean? He gets a real bad rap. And the fact that he's Jewish, especially in the Gospels, they really go after him in that.
Ugh.
And his wife as well. Or his sister that has an affair with Titus, actually.
They don't go after his wife?
Oh, they go after him. They go after,
It's like Donald Trump talking about Ted Cruz.
I don't know. There's
And then Ted Cruz is like, "Oh, let me kiss your butt.
Yeah,
Closer to the hole, sir."
Yeah.
There's definitely a comparison to be made somewhere in there. Now the Roman emperors, we did mention Caligula wanting a statue of himself inside the temple. This would have been a big no-no. Pretty much to anyone you would ask at the time. It would just be heresy. The worst thing you could possibly do.
I think that was the appeal. He's like,
oh yeah,
I wish I could rape a temple. And then he's like, wait, I can.
Well, it's like if the whole world was, and I hate to kind of make this comparison, but it's kind of like if the whole world was handed to like a 24-year-old Kanye West.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he would do things to, it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm the emperor and everyone must bow to me.
I'm a genius.
But do you pray to me? You know what I mean? Do you actually pray to me?
Not yet, but you will.
You will, and like do it just for his own satisfaction. You know what I mean? I don't know if Kanye West is actually like that, but you can see how somebody would get really up their own ass. You know what I mean?
He might be a completely different kind of crazy. I mean,
he didn't buy Twitter, so.
Now Claudius, he tried to kind of roll back some of Caligula's policies that were mean on Judea, but he kind of fucked it up and made things worse. He did.
It's like Joe Biden.
He did make Herod Agrippa the First. He made him stop building the north wall of Jerusalem. Most people attacked from the north end of the city. It's just that's the most tactically advantageous area to do so. So they were adding a wall there, and they're like, wait a minute, if you go into revolt, I'm gonna need that spot open. So stop building that wall. You're acting suspect. You know what I mean? Stop
covering up your weak spots like you're gonna start some shit.
Yeah, leave those wide the fuck open.
Yeah, exactly. And there was this, when Agrippa the First died, during his funeral, some Roman soldiers, like, one of them at least showed his ass and like showed his dick and made fart noises and stuff.
I like this.
Fucking classic. I like that guy.
It pissed the crowd off because he's Jewish, of course, and they wanted the Roman soldier reprimanded. They didn't, and it like started riots and shit. Like people died over it and stuff.
They were like, why isn't he getting arrested? They're like, well, when he was farting, it was the funeral march. So he was kind of doing things the right way, just the instrument wasn't one that you liked. And also, his dick was out, which, you know, I'm not going to make excuses for that.
I'm just glad that, you know, people in lower authority positions these days are held accountable for their actions.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well,
and there's never any like riots because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But Claudius was in this realm ineffectual. Kind of made things worse. And when Claudius died under mysterious circumstances, not so mysterious, but
trampled by an elephant.
Yeah. We'll talk about Claudius one of these days. But
on his birthday.
Sorry. How embarrassing.
But Nero, when Nero became emperor, he needed cash real bad. The reason why he needed cash real bad is because there was this huge fire in Rome, and it burnt a big chunk of the city, and he needed to rebuild it. So he looked to Judea for money, because there were all these like temple sacrifices and like gold that was there, and maybe you could get some gold there. So he sends this guy, Florus, down to Judea, and he tasks him basically. He's like, get me money so I can rebuild what has been destroyed.
Yeah, it's going to cost a lot of money to burn the other half of the city.
Now, basically what happens right away is that there's a land dispute where they offer this guy, this like, I think he's just like a laborer, carpenter, or something like that. Not a carpenter, you know, but like,
there's only one of these things in my heart.
He has he has Bob like Vila. This workshop. He has this workshop on some land, and they offer him like, you know, crazy more than he was asking for it. You know, a shit ton more, so they can build a synagogue on it, right? And this is in Caesarea, which there's, you know, the Jews are actually a minority population. Yeah. It's a place where the Romans, you know, they resettle people there. It's a Roman enclave, Roman colony in a lot of ways. So he refuses, right? And they're like, we know why he refused, you know. Yeah. He's an anti-Semite, you know what I mean? He doesn't like us, you know.
Yeah.
And
they're like Uncle Leo.
Uncle Leo. Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Everybody's an anti-Semite.
Yeah. They're, you know, they're making their sacrifices and stuff. It's, you know, that day, and then the same guy, he comes over and he sacrifices a chicken right in front of it, which makes the whole place unclean, right?
Yeah, and you know, plus that chicken was the mayor.
Yeah. He's kind of like a mascot style character. At least was a mascot style character. Well, they know that the rival sports team's mascot was a pile of chicken blood. So it's creating a lot of tension between the two groups. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, it was a big deal for both groups, okay? Like, they 100% believed in all this stuff. This was a huge deal to them. And definitely it was meant to piss off, you know, the Jews that were, you know, worshiping that day.
Yeah.
And it worked. You know,
they're trying to trigger the libs.
Yeah, there was a riot, and people died, and they basically paid Florus to hear the case, and they paid him a shit ton of money in order to do it, like a crazy amount of money to do it. And Florus basically pocketed the money and then left. You know, he was
off.
he was like, this is the cost of doing business. You know what I mean? Like,
breakage.
All right, great. Here's my money for Nero, right?
Yeah.
Now, did the chicken ever get cooked?
Yeah. These are the real questions.
Yeah, you would you know eat the, you know, in a lot of cases. Now sometimes there were consecrated food, you know, that when you sacrificed it in the temple in Jerusalem, that's consecrated food, and that's only for temple priests or you know, God himself. I think
he loves that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Lamb,
it's like leaving
you know?
cookies out for fucking Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone. I just, you're gonna like
I think that's
spit roast an entire fucking lamb and leave it out until it rots. You're like, no, it's cool. God's eating it. And you're like, but I'm hungry right now, and I'm a person.
Well, that is kind of the difference between like Roman pagan thought and Jewish thought, because in their holiest of holies, the god was present and there, resided there, but he was invisible and you couldn't see him. You know, you couldn't interact with him. Whereas in a Roman temple, they would have a statue of the god, and the god would be in the statue, or you know, it would be a conduit to the god or something. You know what I mean? In one way or another.
Yeah, it's like a cell phone. You just call them up and be like, hey, we're killing a goat, you know?
Yeah.
And he's like, nice.
Badass.
Like,
Killing
drink a bunch
shit's
of water.
rad.
Get fucked up. Yeah.
Apollo hotline. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, Paulo here. What's up?
Yeah.
Go for
There
it.
You're doing what? I'm into it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's honestly kind of how the Romans treated religion. It wasn't too serious. It was kind of like that. You know
Yeah,
what I
let's
mean?
not get weird about it.
They would even let their provincials practice their own religions, as long as you accepted the Roman emperor as your emperor. You could practice whatever you want to
You do what the
practice.
fuck you want.
They really don't give a shit.
That creates kind of a sticky situation, right?
It
So
does.
they're like worship whatever you want, as long as you know the emperor is actually the top dog, and the emperor was chosen by God, and some of us kind of think he is God. So
He's a god for sure.
No, it's not. It's not really like it's chosen by God. You know, it wasn't really a mystery how Roman emperors became emperors. You know what I mean?
okay,
It's
so
that
different than monarchy.
They would become deified when they died. And Caligula saying that he was a living god was something new and even a little heretical. You know, they were like, oh, you know, no one's a living god. You know what I mean? Like, so when
Except the actual gods.
right?
He was, in many ways, he was the Crystal Pepsi of Roman emperors.
Yeah. Ahead of its time.
They're like, I don't know if I like the flavor of this,
Yeah.
but it is outrageous, and I like outrageous.
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
it's-
Crystal Pepsi will be real popular someday.
Yeah.
We
It's
just still
basic-
aren't there as a society.
Yeah.
It's basically just. I mean, this is definitely a culture clash, right? Because basically, what the Romans are talking about is like your traditions, right? Like, you know, you practice whatever you want to practice. You want to put a tree in your house and put candles on it at on the winter solstice. You go for that. You know what I mean? But you remember that the Roman emperor is your emperor. You know what I mean? And if you don't, do that, we're gonna have problems. And like, they'd be like, I don't know what you guys are arguing about in the ways of like Torah or whatever, but what did I hear you guys say about not accepting the Roman emperor? What'd you say?
We accept this guy's, the trees in this guy's backyard. He thinks they're
Yeah.
gods. That's fine. You can't even accept our emperor.
Yeah.
They're like,
Come on, man.
no. You're gonna accept the emperor. He is your emperor.
We touched on that briefly in the last episode, is why like Roman religious ideology and Jewish religious ideology struggled to get along so well. Like,
Yeah,
when
they're
you're basically,
diametrically opposed.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly,
They just
like-
don't gel. They don't go together.
well, it's like the Romans. I mean, arguably at that time, like, was one of the most like cross-cultural societies that ever existed. And
oh yeah,
in most cultures, it was actually pretty easy. You could just be like, oh yeah, all those gods, your gods are real too,
Yeah.
But our emperor is also. And as long as like you were fine with that, it didn't matter. But like
Right.
when you were like that was an issue for you, like it was with the Jewish people, they started butting heads.
Right.
Think about it this
absolutely.
way. I'm fine with any people that I meet who happen to be poly, but like, I don't think we have enough in common for us to actually be friends. And I think that's what was going on there. They're either way too advanced or fucking living a lie, and I'm cool with that. I can fucking deal with it if it's like in a bar or a social setting or whatever. But
He's like, I don't need to try to remember all your partners' names because I'm probably
come
not
on.
going to see them again.
Oh, People could do whatever they want, as long as, they're all consenting.
Yeah, if they're not hurting anybody, have a good time.
Florus. Remember Florus?
I do.
Now, Florus, when they start getting on his case about this, hearing this.
He's just like, everybody's on my back about this.
Yeah, he imprisons the petitioners. He just throws them in jail.
I like that you can just do that.
Problem solved.
He's like, that's that, you know what I mean? And then, while he's at it, he loots the temple tithes, So he just sticks his hand in the cookie jar, takes everything out, and then, he fucks off. He basically is going from Caesarea to Jerusalem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then
I like that this guy double dips too. He's like, I'm taking the money to hear your thing, and also this pocket of cash. Bye.
And when he did that, people protested afterwards.
Oh yeah.
And the way they protested is it's actually kind of funny. They passed like a hat around, and they were like, for Florus, he's impoverished. He needs money. He's so poor. He had to take the money out of the temple. Can you believe it? Can we get some money for Florus? He's very poor. He's on hard times.
He took that well. He took it really well. And,
he did not think it was very funny.
He's like, at
all.
Yeah, it's like Donald Trump tweeting about SNL when they made fun of him, how the show's gone downhill and it's not funny anymore.
It's not funny.
It's very clear that he just doesn't like them making fun of him.
Yeah, absolutely. So he comes back. He is pretty pissed off. He comes back with like a small, cavalry contingent. Mm-hmm. He posts up in the in the Herodian palace in the upper city. We'll talk about the city here in a second. In the upper city, he posts up there. And he's like, bring me the people responsible for those protests. I want to see them here. And they were like, look. They're young, These younger guys, they like started a bunch of shit,
Mm-hmm. Young, dumb, and full of cum.
You're just gonna piss people off if you start, rounding people up and stuff. Yeah. You're just gonna do that. And he goes, okay, and like he claps them in irons, rounds up a bunch of them, and like starts like executing them, flogging them to the bone. He massacres a bunch of them. It causes an uprising.
I do like that you phrased that. If he's like, oh, okay, I'll go home anyway. Put this guy in irons. I'm gonna do it anyway.
Yeah.
The town square is gonna run red with blood and white with the cum of these young men. 'Cause they're full of it.
Yeah.
They're young and dumb.
Yeah. So it causes an uprising, and they kind of have like a parlay. You know what I mean? And there's like a cavalry contingent coming up to meet the rebels, and they're gonna salute each other. It's like this formality thing that you do. You sort of salute each other, and then you're gonna talk to each other, right?
Don't mind the Blade guy screaming.
And Florus actually, he sends word up to these cavalry guys, and he's like, don't return their salute. So basically when they go up there, he knows that, this Roman cavalry can just destroy these rebels. Mm-hmm. So, they basically salute, and then the Romans don't. Those are fighting words. Now they're fighting, and everyone is massacred.
Let's fight. Them's fighting words.
Yeah, but it makes it look like it's on their end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they, started. Anyway, it's.
But the rebels have kind of an advantage, right? Like,
I mean,
there's kind of natural bottlenecks.
There would be, but for a lot of other reasons that we'll discuss, they kind of cancel each other out for what they have against them. And we'll get there. So basically, there's this massacre that happens. Everyone that has now, because beforehand, they were like, war with Rome is kind of ridiculous, you guys. Like, even Agrippa II came to Jerusalem right before the outbreak of the rebellion, and he was like, guys, this is not going to work out well for you. Like, he was talking about how many how many, legions that Vespasian had, at his command. And he was like, there's 3 there. He's like, Spain is much bigger than Judea. And Rome keeps control of that with one legion. And legions are huge. They're like big cities, but like 3 legions he's coming, And he's like, you gotta, like, this is folly, you guys. You know what I mean? This is crazy. And then, they stoned him until he ran out of town. They didn't run him out of town on a rail, Tyler. I'm sorry. But basically, they ran him out of town.
I'd rather be ran out of town on a rail than ran out of a town getting pelted with stones.
Yeah.
Because no one's fucking around. Everyone's thrown to kill. It's just people
absolutely.
were strong back then through malnutrition. So
Yeah.
it's like the Grandpa and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but it's just everybody.
Yeah. The temple class, they're fighting amongst each other. There is no law and order in Judea. The Romans have no interest in guarding their people, clearly. So you get all these bandits that start, going around. And like Josephus, all of this comes from Josephus, and we'll talk about him later. Like, he's the one that tells us this story. He talks about how a lot of these zealots are also these, what he calls brigands.
Love a brigand.
You know what I mean? And so we don't know if the zealots are brigands or if the brigands are zealots. They might be both. They might be a little bit of both. You know what I mean? They hate the Romans, but they hate the idea of, this idea of going to war and staying inside the walls of Jerusalem. Some of them think the only way is to stay inside the walls of Jerusalem. So that's how fractious these groups are.
Is there any chance that these brigands are opportunists, that they're not zealots, but they're taking an opportunity to take advantage, they're taking advantage of the chaos
Absolutely.
to do, not high seas, but like, shenanigans, swashbuckling, ne'er-do-well, good times.
Yeah, they're raiding caravans, things like this.
Yeah, because they can.
Pirates, basically, yeah. And they can because there's a breakdown in law and order. And among these sort of brigand groups is the Sicarii. And these guys are, literally, it means dagger men. And these guys are like a group of straight-up assassins, like Assassin's Creed style, that have they get their name from the small daggers that they carried, the curved daggers that they carried underneath, like, their robes. And their whole thing is that they'd blend into a crowd and then, like, assassinate a guy, right then and there, and then run away and, like, blend in with everybody. You know what I mean?
That's
so these guys are Jewish ninjas?
Yeah, dude. Like,
fucking
assassins.
badass.
Yeah. And
Happy Hanukkah. Blood runs out.
Well, they're kind of bad guys, though. You know what I mean?
No.
They're bad. Because here's the thing, is...
Gotta love a villain.
The Romans were complicit in the Sicarii, being a thing. And so were, other Jewish... Like, there were some temple priests that, hired them to do stuff. But there was murders committed inside the temple. And some, pointed to that as a time of like, well, the temple's been defiled. It's now unclean. Now God is angry at us. Now God is going to send, all of this fervor down on us because you have defiled the temple and made it unclean. A lot of people, like the Gospels make it sound like it's because they let Jesus die in 33 and said, like, the blood is on our hands. They make it sound like that's why God is punishing the Jews. No.
And that's a little
frankly,
retroactive.
It's ridiculous, is what it is what it is.
That's
Mark
a retcon.
Mark was written in, like, during this time, 66 to 70, like, right in this time. Everything else was written after the siege. So think about it with that lens, you know what I mean?
Well, and I will say, okay, so, like, if you get killed in a temple, the exchange, are you really going to kill me here? Well, God's watching, and the assassin's like, that's the idea. had to have happened at some point, and that is badass. That's so fucking bad. Let him watch. Yeah. Then he walks away, and the guy explodes for some reason.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were gonna say like he like takes like the dagger and does like a cool move with it to like shake
he does
the blood
that before
off.
before he starts walking away.
Yeah, to like
and then
shake the blood off.
He shoots a crocodile and says, "Your luggage."
So there's this that is sort of happening when basically one of the priests is killed. Another priest, is like, no more letting Gentiles or non-Jews sacrifice, close or near any of our temples or anything like that. That was a big deal to them. And then there, of course, as things start to heat up, there are straight up genocides in the places where they are minorities in Judea. The people there just start killing all the Jews because they know that they're going to bring down the weight of the Roman Empire on their heads if they don't. And at least that's how they rationalize it to themselves. So they straight up commit ethnic cleansing to do that. Then there's these, other groups, this John of Gischala, Simon Bar Giorga. These guys start taking these temples, these fortresses that were built during the time of Herod the Great. That's why they called them Herodian fortresses. So they took these fortresses as like defense places, for the oncoming Romans. And, as sort of things are going down, they send Cestius Gallus with a force to Jerusalem. And he's like, because people are like, it sounds kind of hot over there, like,
it's a hot time summer in the city.
Yeah. Agrippa II, after he makes that speech that like, you guys can't do this, he they throw rocks at him and he leaves. And when he gets back to where he's going, he's like, it's kind of getting hot back there. Yeah. They send Cestius Gallus. And Cestius Gallus, he's older. He was an older gentleman. He was actually looked down as a lucky guy. He'd been lucky in battle. Yeah. So they sent him with the force, and it was just supposed to scare him, right? Just supposed to scare him into, submission, right? And unbeknownst to him, before he gets there, they massacre the Roman garrison. So when he shows up to like the high upper city and realizes right away that he's in like a hornet's nest. And he's like, oh shit, we got to get out of here, because this is not a besieging force, and like cavalry is useless in the city, right? Yeah, totally useless in like these small streets, right?
Yep. Okay.
So he now is running away. And there's people ahead of him that know that he's running away now, that attack his rear flanks, because it's very vulnerable. The Roman army is very vulnerable when it's on the move.
Yeah, isn't that often the case though? Like a lot of fatalities in war these times was when people were retreating.
Yeah, I mean sometimes if somebody follows up the retreat, presses their advantage.
Yeah.
And basically, Cestius is telling, his forces like, okay, we'll drop everything we can drop, but we need like these ballista, we need all this siege equipment, because, it's expensive, But then there was a point where they were like, drop that too, run for your lives. And like they had to run because they were just on top of them.
Yeah,
and so
your collection of Fabergé eggs, we just can't. There's no bringing that with us.
Yeah. So
also, Cestius Gallus was like, I just want to like reiterate that I'm lucky in love. The love that I have for you guys, the love that I have for my family. That's how I'm lucky. Combat, not so lucky. I apologize for the entire scenario. I made some missteps. I think we all did. I think we can split up the responsibility equally.
Yeah. Everybody gets a finite amount of luck, and he used all of his too early.
Yeah. They lost a standard, a Roman standard.
Oh, no.
And that's like the stick, with like the eagle on top that they carry into battle. And they're different for different legions, And that was incredibly humiliating to lose that.
How embarrassing.
Incredibly. It's like the thing you really don't want to do.
They're fairly ornate, and they had to have been individually handmade.
Well, and it's like it's like the symbol of your legion, You know what I mean? Think about, as a fighting force, losing the symbol of your legion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That would be a pretty big deal. It'd be like somebody taking the American flag from like a military base or something.
Yeah.
The one that's like on the pole or something.
And rolling it into a giant joint. And yeah, just fucking. That's Stripes 2 Electric Boogaloo. I'm working on that one.
They should make Stripes too.
Fucking
With an
get
all-female cast.
Yeah, and Bill Murray shows up and he goes, I was Stripes and now you're Stripes too. And he fucking, I don't know.
He looks right into the camera and asks for his paycheck.
Yeah.
Can I get paid now?
And then he grabs woman's ass because he still thinks it's the 70s.
Yeah.
He's gotten in trouble lately, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. He's made some choices.
So Castius kills himself because that's dishonorable right there.
But he still had 8 lives. Wait, no, that's a cat. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's not
Catsius.
Yeah.
Though I want to see that version.
It's just that he's lucky. It's not that he's a cat. There's a difference.
Well, that made Rome look bad. And if it's one thing Rome doesn't like doing, it's looking bad.
Yeah, we like looking great.
Yeah. So, meanwhile, in Rome, there's this guy named Titus Flavius Vespasianus, or how we're going to call him Vespasian. Vespasian was a tax collector's son. He was a mule breeder, actually from a very notorious place for mule breeding. They were proud of their mules.
Notorious. Is that what you said?
Yeah,
Infamous.
it was famous. They were famous for their mules.
Yeah.
For how
They made
good
some
their mules
badass mules.
were. Yeah, they were good at it.
You think this? I'm gonna sell you this. You think it's gonna get anything pregnant? You better fucking bet different.
They're like,
pride ourselves on these.
Nobody gets horses and donkeys to fuck better than we do.
And those horses and donkeys that fuck, we make sure they fuck a bunch of different stuff before we even put them on the market.
Yeah.
To make sure
these
that
things are sterile.
They're fucking they're so sterile you could drink their jizz and you wouldn't get sick. I did it earlier today.
Yeah. How do you think I get so
Jesus
robust?
It made me sterile. Now my wife's mad at me.
Jesus Christ.
We don't even have kids yet. I've been focusing all my life on
On my career.
on my career.
Getting these animals to fuck.
Yeah. They're not even the same species. You know how hard that is?
Yeah.
So mules. What were you talking about?
So he came from humble beginnings. Okay.
Yes.
Humble beginnings. And the way for a Roman male to have upward mobility in Rome was to join the military. So he joined the military, he worked his way up, and then his mother paid a bunch of money to make Vespasian a tribune.
Continue.
A tribune basically is not a guaranteed step up, but it is basically you have to be here to be considered to move up to the next social class.
So it's a pretty big deal.
It's a big deal.
Like, it's probably how a male donkey would feel having sex with a female horse.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, guys, I'm moving up in the world.
I don't know.
You compare things to mules, and I suddenly get it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Tell it to me in mules. Like, in a mule metaphor, and then I'm on board.
He served in the Rhine, along the Rhine. And actually, while Caligula was emperor, his job was to keep the streets of Rome clean. And because that was his job, Caligula thought it would be funny to like cover Vespasian in mud and shit and stuff. And like take a shovel of it and like toss it on him and be like, "Hey, fucker!" He's trying to keep the streets clean, but look at him.
Yeah, look at him. He's covered in shit.
Yeah, he thought it was very funny.
Well, I think it's pretty funny.
I mean, that's why they put it in Back to the Future. It's solid gag.
No, the scene in Back to the Future. well, Biff is representative of Vespasian, and Marty McFly is clearly Caligula.
Caligula, yeah.
Yeah, on his hoverboard or skateboard, given the time of year.
Yeah, they just don't mention that he's also like the emperor.
Yeah.
And he's like, woohoo, sliding around on a skateboard.
Yeah.
And they're like, he is not very responsible.
He's just covering a man in shit with a shovel while everyone laughs, and it's like dun 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 dun.
He's the emperor of that school. That's for goddamn sure.
Yeah, he's actually the president. But he lasted through Caligula, through those 4 years. He received patronage, though, from one of Claudius's freedmen. So this this wealthy freedman that used to be Claudius's slave, now freedman, gave him money and sort of was like, yeah, you're gonna like come up through the ranks, you know what I mean? And then when Claudius became emperor, all of a sudden Vespasian found himself like right next to the emperor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
But
so
his mules were happy too.
yeah. He was proud of his mules.
His mules are like, we're 2 degrees away from the emperor.
Yeah. He commanded legions on the Rhine, and he actually commanded Claudius's invasion of Britain. He was the one that commanded that. His son, Titus, was actually the one that commanded the legions that defeated Boudica, if you remember. Vespasian's son, Titus. Vespasian also was sort of looked on as a threat to Nero because he was popular, and especially popular among the military, which that's a problem, you know what I mean? Another reason why Nero didn't like Vespasian is because Vespasian fell asleep while Nero was playing his lyre. You know, like he gathered everybody like, hey, guys, listen to this. Bang, bang, bang. And like, you know, Vespasian like fell asleep and then like left the room. And like he kind of went into hiding because he thought Nero was going to kill him after that. Like because of this.
He was like, I wasn't asleep. I was just vibing super hard on it, dude.
Yeah.
That happened in Curb Your Enthusiasm when Larry David went to go see Hamilton. He kept falling asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Lin-Manuel Miranda tried to kill him.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's kind of, sort of. They did have a duel.
It's the gist. They had a duel.
When this whole Cestius debacle happened, Nero knew the perfect guy to send to, you know, make him pay. And that was Vespasian. So Vespasian got a promotion, but a promotion that was a long ways away from Nero. You know what I mean?
As far the fuck away from me as I can get you.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know why I pictured Matt Berry saying that.
Yeah.
Matt Berry as Nero.
Yeah.
Or Caligula.
Oh, right.
Right, as
Sorry.
Caligula.
Yeah.
Or as Nero.
Still good.
As Nero.
It was Nero.
It was Nero.
Oh, is it Nero? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're both shitty emperors.
Yeah.
Yep.
And his son Titus would also be one of his commanders under him as well during this Judean campaign. Vespasian was a short, stout, bald man who had what the Italians called a punch face. We had like a hooked nose and your chin, a jutting chin that came out.
Yeah, like a crescent moon.
Like a crescent face, almost.
Like a vertical mandible.
Yeah. And yeah, Titus would basically take he had one legion that he was going to take up through Alexandria and meet up with his father, and they were going to assemble their army in Caesarea, and then basically get to this slow, methodical work of putting this revolt down. And that's the way they saw it, as a revolt, not as a full-on war or revolution, you know.
It's a police action.
Right. Yeah, that's how they kind of saw it. They kind of saw it as, because they thought of it as Rome. They thought of it as Romans rising up against Romans. They didn't really understand that it was like this other thing that sort
And
of
also,
stood out.
like, definitely not like a civil war.
No,
like-
no. You know.
They're like, why are these Romans rising up against Rome? They love Rome.
They love
Yeah.
us. They're Romans.
They're Rome. We're Rome.
Yeah. Now, Titus Flavius Vespasianus, or as we'll call him, Titus is the son of Vespasian. Now, he was born during the reign of Caligula, and he actually had a very good education, a court education, while Claudius was emperor. He actually grew up with Claudius's son, Britannicus, and he was there when Britannicus was poisoned, basically to secure the succession for Nero. He was there.
They're products of the system.
You gotta poison everybody back then.
Yeah, they were poisoning people. He also served as a tribune on the German frontier. He went, to the invasion of Britain, defeated Boudica. Yeah, now he would join. Sorry, let me just go through that again. He also served as tribune on the German frontier. And in the invasion of Britain, as I've said, and defeated Boudica as well. Now, Vespasian's army was going to be massive. Ultimately, he would command 3 legions, 8 cavalry squadrons, and 10 auxiliary cohorts. Now, one day I'll tell you what all this stuff sort of means. They're huge. That's all I got. Each legion is gigantic. It's the size of basically a city, each of them. Huge. They're each just this huge area. And he has 3, While marching, this column would extend for miles, and it would move at like 3 miles an hour. This whole thing. It would take, full like half an hour, an hour for this whole thing to pass. You know what I mean? Food and water supply lines were immense. Every invasion and siege that was going to happen during this campaign meant that there was an ecological disaster every single time that they showed up. They would strip away all of the timber, all of the animals, decimate, areas with the sheer size of their army.
Just destroy all the environment of everything they come in contact with.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Dynamite fishing for breakfast, dynamite hunting for lunch, and then a dynamite fireworks show on the edge of the dead forest at the end of the day. Every day for 100 days.
Yeah.
Well,
it's like the ooze monster in Fern Gullies, just coming on through.
Yeah, absolutely.
But just dudes.
Yeah.
And actually, Vespasian. When they did pass the Dead Sea, he had heard the rumors that you just float in it. So he wanted to test the theory, and this is his little science experiment. He ties 2 people together, he gets 2 people that can't swim, and he ties them ties them up, and then throws them in the water.
Did they both die?
No, they floated, and he's like,
Yeah,
but it's like, oh, you can't swim? Let me tie you up and throw you in the water.
The thing that sucks about the Dead Sea is the water from it. You don't know if your dumplings are done or not. Usually they float to the top when they're done.
Yeah.
If everything floats to the top, how do you know when they're done?
There's no way.
You don't cook your dumplings in the Dead Sea.
Maybe you don't.
But isn't it the salt that makes the dumplings, or that makes the people float? It'd be good with the dumplings.
How are you gonna heat up the Dead Sea to cook the dumplings?
You make a little camp stove.
Yeah.
And then you put it next to the water?
Yeah. And then you put the water in, you take the water out of the sea, you put it in a pot, you get it to.
You put it up. I see. I see. Okay.
Come on, Jerry.
You're not trying to float in the pot, though.
Try to keep up. With my dumpling logic.
Yeah.
Now, Vespasian was a big fan of something that Augustus used to say, which was make haste slowly. Basically hurry up and wait, you know? And that's what he would kind of do. It was calculated. He was cautious, really kind of what you want in a general of this era. And he methodically, went to one of these Herodian fortresses and then basically sieged it until they either gave up, killed themselves, or there was no one left. Sold all the women and children into slavery, and then moved on to the next one. And basically he was doing all of this before he got to Jerusalem because he wanted to take care of any resistance he would have, in behind him, basically.
Well, you got to keep your skills sharp. You don't want to be rusty when you show up for the main ransacking.
Yeah.
Well, that and he knew that everyone else was all the survivors would run to Jerusalem. Yeah. So that's like another thing, you know what I mean? He knows that like these zealots are gonna go there and like fight when they get with everyone else at Jerusalem, and he would even tell Titus like don't worry, they're over there killing themselves. I'm just gonna take my sweet time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, meanwhile, inside the city of Jerusalem, and as Vespasian is conducting this campaign, and the survivors are coming back, one such survivor is John of Gischala. And basically, after Titus lays siege to where he's at, John basically says like, "Hey, it's Shabbat, dude. We gotta stop fighting." You know what I mean? And for some reason, Titus said, "Okay."
Yeah.
And
you sure as fuck can't go bowling.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also something like Marcus Agrippa the second, or Herod Marcus Agrippa the second brought up. It was like, hey, these Romans will fight on Shabbat, dude. They don't care. You know what I mean? Now, some of these zealots were like, no, we got to do everything we can, even use the consecrated food, even use all of this stuff to fight the enemy. God will always be on our side, from Deuteronomy, da-da-da-da-da. So basically, John of Gischala escapes out the back at night, and when Titus wakes up the next morning, the gates are wide open, and there's like women and children there, and he's pissed off that he was tricked, and he slaughters the city, and then puts the rest into slavery.
Brutal.
It's absolutely brutal. Yeah.
Do you think John of Gischala, before he escaped at the back door, looked back at the city and then said, "Fuck all you guys," and then just jumped into the night?
Yeah.
I think he lived to fight another day, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Sometimes you
guys.
Sometimes you'd have to make that difficult call,
Yeah, tactical retreat.
But when he got to Jerusalem, they like take it over, they're his whole band of guys, and like he gets there and he's distrustful of up the people, the rich people up in the upper city. He's like, they're going to capitulate to Rome. They're going to sell us all out. They're going to capitulate to Rome. He doesn't trust Eleazar, who's holed up in the temple, because he's like, we control the temple, we control everything. And they actually, they don't control anything. And so basically they're all sandwiched there in the city, right? And they fight each other all the time. They hate each other. You know what I mean? And like they call small truces now and again, but it's bad. You know what I mean? So basically there's the upper city, right? That has a wall around it, right? And then there's the lower city. And this is like the suburbia, right? That's what they called it. The Jerusalem suburbs, right?
Yeah.
And then the city outgrew that. And then there was a second city. And this is right next to the temple. And then they built a wall around all of that, right? This is the
to contain all the improv, right?
So there's these, so there's three walls, right? Then there's that newest wall that, remember, Claudius told Agrippa the First to stop building.
Yeah, so back off that wall.
Yeah, that north wall.
I'm pulling a reverse Trump. Just leave it.
It's like,
fine.
I don't like walls.
Yeah.
It's not quite a Reagan. It's not quite a Trump. It's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Just leave it where it is.
Yeah.
We're good.
Well, they finish it.
Okay. Well,
as this rebellion really kicks off, they finish that wall, and that's where the new city is. So there's the new city, the second city, which is like right adjacent to the temple.
Yeah, Chicago.
And then there's the lower city, and then there's the upper city, right? Anyway, just so you know.
Yeah, lay it out.
And when I talk about this, like upper city, like there's like other groups here, there's like the Essenes, there's the Hillel group, there's all these other moderates, and they're pushing and pulling.
Did you say Essenes?
Yeah, Essenes.
And these were your ravers and.
You got your sharks, you got your jets, you got your burnouts, your jocks, goths.
Oh, they have that scene when like the new kid gets to the school and they like point out all the like different cliques.
Here's all the cliques for the new kid.
Yeah. One of the Hillel guys actually faked his own death to get out of Jerusalem.
Nice.
And, like, he went to Vespasian to, like, plead for his family's, safety. I don't know how well it worked out for him, but, yeah, it's just kind of a crazy thing that happened. And basically, I could do a whole episode on the internal struggle and the lead up to the siege. There's a lot that happens. But basically, John of Gischala takes full control of... Basically, he holds the whole city hostage, right? He takes control of it. Eleazar is trying to, like, do some cloak and dagger stuff, It's not really working. This whole thing is happening, and John of Gischala knows he needs backup, you know what I mean? So he spreads this rumor to the nearby Idumeans, who much earlier had been forcibly converted to Judaism, and they, for some reason, were on the Zealots' side, So they sent
they went in deep.
Yeah, they sent this group of like 20,000 into the city, and like they conducted like this reign of terror. Basically, it was this really bad reign of terror. Are you with us or are you against us? Like it happens in a lot of history. You see it in the French Revolution.
Like door to door. No,
it's if people were dead and in the streets, you wouldn't try to bury them. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because bodies had to be buried within the faith. You know what I mean? Burial wasn't allowed in the city, though. That's another thing. But people would, it's basically this whole thing, like, where your loyalty is in question. You know what I mean? And it creates, this sort of atmosphere of fear, in the city. The Idumeans kind of realize that they're being used. A lot of them leave, not all of them, but a lot of them leave. And it further strained their food supply. And they didn't really have a problem with food until Eleazar and John of Gischala really start going at it, and they burn each other's food supplies. And now food is like really a problem in the city.
Well, everyone's hungry and they smell this cooking food. It smells delicious.
It would further swell
for the Passover feast.
Right. Well, it's supposed to be, this day where pilgrims show up in the city, and now they're, and it might be by design that they planned their invasion at that time because, it would swell the city's numbers, creating further chaos within the city once the siege begins. But the thing is, there's this thing that happens, and Vespasian's, whole campaign kind of grinds to a halt real quick. And the reason why is because Nero kills himself. There's a bunch of reasons why Nero kills himself. I don't have time to go into it today. It'd definitely be a great future episode, but basically the Year of the Four Emperors happens. Galba says he's emperor in the Western legions. He gets killed by Otho, who says he's emperor. And then Vitellius comes down and he takes control, with his troops from the German Rhine legions. And
power vacuum.
Yeah, it's a power vacuum. And Vespasian, at first, he sends Titus to go and be like, all right, new emperor, hello, But before Titus can get there, Galba's killed, you know what I mean? And he's like, oh, shit. So he comes back and he's like, I don't know who the emperor is. So Vespasian's like, well, I'm in no hurry to get to Jerusalem, to be perfectly honest with you. And frankly, if I went down to Alexandria, where Rome gets all of its grain, I could stand on basically the grain supply of Rome and cause further havoc and chaos, and then swoop in and get the empire for myself. And yeah, he gets proclaimed emperor in Alexandria. All of the Eastern legions swear fealty to him. They attack Vitellius's forces, and bing, bang, bop. There's a big story there, but Vespasian becomes emperor, right?
And when you become emperor, the thing they don't tell you, especially at the time, with Alexandria and its grain supply, is you do get a breakfast cereal named after you. And it's a heartier, more adult cereal because of the times. More think less Captain Crunch, more Honey Bunches of Oats. It's still very good, but it's for a more refined adult palate.
In those days, the honey really made it pretty sweet.
Yeah,
it's more sweet than you usually got. So don't complain.
He basically tells Titus, like, all right, you got to finish this, right? So Titus assembles his army that he's going to march on Jerusalem with. Mm-hmm. He has 3 legions and a bunch of other cohorts and things like this from other parts of the empire. And he starts marching. And Simon Bar Giora realizes that the power structure within Jerusalem has broken down. And he decides that he's going to take it on himself to take command of the city for the siege. So he shows up and he surrounds the city and he's like, look, I got you surrounded, and Johnny Gashala's like, I got your wife held hostage. And he's like, shut up, dude. I can kill all of you if I want. You know what I mean? So they have this tenuous peace, right?
It's like, take my wife, please.
Yeah.
Take her.
And Simon Bar Giora, he takes the upper city, and Johnny Gashala, he's going to take the lower city and the second city. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they're going to have this tenuous peace while the Romans show up. But they're fighting each other straight up until they see them show up on the horizon. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So in April of the year 70, 3 days before Passover, Titus's legions show up in different directions and at slightly different times. So no one can really focus on where they're going to attack. I can't really focus my defense this way or that, right?
Spinning plates.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they would say at the time.
Did Jerusalem consider going up to the mountain and getting the ghost army?
Yeah, right.
Johnny Gashala was like, I'm gonna escape out the back again and go get Goblin Army.
He's not coming back with the Goblin.
Yeah, they're like, he's not coming back. We're all dead.
Yeah. Now, something I forgot to mention is during the siege of Yotapata, and it's Yodfat, I think now, there was this guy. He was the commander. When they were putting out all these forts and stuff, and they were fortifying these places, certain commanders would be in charge of different forts in different areas, and the guy in charge of the Galilean forts, that was a guy named Josephus, right? And so when they're in the final moments of basically burning Yotapata to the ground, they pull this guy and his friends out of a hole. Right? And all of his friends are dead because Josephus was this guy that he came from a well-to-do family, and he said that like he was some sort of child progeny, you know what I mean? Like
prodigy?
Prodigy, there you go. Yeah. Prodigy. Where like Jewish leaders would ask him about like Jewish law at the age of 14. And it's like, oh, come on.
He says that
he says this.
You know these people who like they're like notoriously full of shit all the time, and they're like, well, actually, like I was doing this at this age, and they're like, bullshit.
Yeah.
I was in a gifted program.
Yeah.
It's like, man,
your school didn't, like, you grew up in the sticks, you didn't have a gifted program.
Yeah. And like he even followed a guy, like a guru, out into the desert one time. And you know what I mean? Like, he toyed with that idea. That there was a lot of guys like that at this time. You know what I mean? So he's this upper crust guy. He tells everybody at Yotapata, like, I got this ragtag, like, 9,000 strong trained army that's going to come help us that never quite shows up, you know?
Yeah.
They were right there with the ghost army.
Yeah, turns out they're just not there.
He went to go get Goblin Army.
Yeah.
Turns out the army I said I had was like the friendships we made along the way.
Yeah.
So, and like, Johnny Gashala's his like rival, you know what I mean? He doesn't want to make Johnny Gashala look very good. So Johnny Gashala doesn't look very great in Josephus's writings, you know what I mean? Who does look really good? Titus.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because when they're surrendering, all of Josephus's dudes, they want to kill themselves because they would rather die fighting, than be taken by the Roman army and live as a slave,
Yeah, and then, and Josephus was going to put him in his sitcom, Titus.
Yeah.
Stacy Keach is there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's an abusive older man.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As they're, down in this hole, basically, they're hiding in this hole. They decide that they're going to cast lots, and they're going to kill each other, right? As they get down to like the last ones, Josephus has managed to survive this whole time. And it's him and one more guy. And he's like, let's call it a day. How about, And so the other dude commits suicide. Josephus doesn't. When the Romans pull him out of the hole, he's like, hey, like what are you going to do? You know what I mean? Yeah. Are you going to say like, I hate the Romans. I've always hated Romans. I like killing Romans. I wish I could kill more. Yeah. No, you'd say, now listen, I never wanted to do this.
It's like, hey, come on.
Yeah.
Things have already been hard on everyone. I was down in that hole. Yeah. Everybody was killing each other. It was super crazy. I was like, guys, stop. It's going to be fine. And they just kept on going.
Yeah.
They kept killing themselves listening to
I loved these guys. Yeah. All of them.
Yeah. Well, this is when he starts saying that, like, they brought it on themselves and God is punishing them. And God is using the Roman Empire as his weapon, to come down on these,
well, they shouldn't have killed
Jews.
That chicken mayor.
Yeah.
He's still pissed about it.
Yep. Well, so he also tells Vespasian, like, you're going to be emperor. You're going to be emperor one day. So they keep him around. You know what I mean? They're like, I like what this guy has to say.
He's an ego fluffer.
Yeah. And when Vespasian does become emperor, he stays with Titus as like a go-between between the Jews. Josephus has family in the city. You know what I mean? So, like, it's so obvious why we get the attitude that we do when we, read Josephus about this whole thing. That, they were fighting each other and there's no good guys on that side. You know what I mean?
Well, he's a sycophant.
I mean, sort of
or
by
an
necessity.
Opportunist.
Yeah, there you go. Opportunist, I would say.
I think both of those are accurate.
Yeah. He turned into a sycophant.
Titus, definitely.
Yeah. So when Titus shows up, because, of course, Josephus tells us, he gives them a last chance to surrender. You know what I mean? And he doesn't get a response. So we're going to do this.
The message was left on scene,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So,
turn your read receipts off, people. That's all I'm going to say. It'll just drive you mad. Just everybody turn them off.
Turn them off. I don't know why they exist.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's so that I can be like, you're driving, you're like, my sister texted me. And then you look at it and you forget to text her for like 4 days.
Yeah.
And she texts you again. And,
it causes problems.
Sends you a picture of a cat or something.
Yeah. Oh, I missed that. I love telling people that you have read receipts turned off and they're like, wait, you can do that? And you see in their eyes how many times they know that they've wronged people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But But it's like everybody in the world has checked a text, been in a situation where they couldn't respond,
absolutely.
then forgot.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just don't want to deal with them right now.
I don't want to deal with you or anybody.
Yeah. Sorry, Domino's. I've passed out.
I know a guy that they stopped delivering to him because he's done that too many times. He's like,
that was me.
Is this Tyler?
Is it me?
No, it wasn't.
I know when I lived with Tyler, this did happen.
Oh, it did.
The nice thing is, like, ever since COVID, DoorDash will just drop it at your door. So if you worst case scenario, you're like, it's cold and that's on me.
Yeah. When Chris and I lived together, we had a pizza place that wouldn't deliver to our house anymore because they were like, no, every time he's passed out, doesn't answer the door. And because I'd always order a pizza at like 2 a.m. after getting back from the bar, then put on a movie and fall asleep to it.
It happened all the time.
Yeah. And actually, I'm pretty sure I want to say one of the other roommates had to convince them that they tried to order a pizza from the same place. They're like, no, that guy's nowhere near this pizza. It's a bunch of different other guys.
I'm not letting this guy anywhere near this pizza.
That made
it's like, is he there? You're like, yeah, but I'm not letting him eat the pizza.
No, we can't have any. Yeah,
I'm gonna watch you guys eat it.
He's got a checkered tablecloth stuffed into his shirt and a fork and a knife, and I'm not giving him a bite of this pizza. He's got a roast in the oven anyway.
He's passed out with the roast in the oven.
His house is gonna burn down, and I'm gonna watch it and eat this delicious pizza.
Yeah.
Around the city, there are farms, of course, and because they're not going to use their farms, they're going to be behind the walls of the city, they set up all of these obstacles, all of these brambles, these fortifications, basically, to make it easier to come in, but hard to get out. Easy to come in, hard to come out. Yeah.
The Roche Motel, baby.
Well, you kind of create bottlenecks. You can create little bottlenecks here and there. So they have a maze of these things, you know what I mean? And Titus, who he sets his main military camp out of range up on Mount Scopus, so he can overlook the city. This is where a bunch of people who would besiege the city, this is where they would set up.
That's right.
And he decides he's going to scout these areas, and he doesn't even put on his breastplate. He doesn't put on a helmet, and he takes a small.
He's just going for a stroll.
Yeah, he takes a small cavalry detachment, and he goes down, and he's going to check him out. And as this is happening, a sortie comes out and cuts his column in half. Oof. And he's like, "Oh fuck!" and struggles to link back up with his guys, but can't. He's already encircled because of how these obstacles are set up.
Oh, I like to think they set up a straight up scary house, like a haunted house situation.
Yeah, there's a mirror that makes him look all stretched out and shit. So he's spooked.
Yeah, he has to walk through the tunnel that's spinning.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, that's kind of difficult.
Yeah.
So he has to fight his way out, and he makes it. But they kind of realize at that point, oh shit, these guys aren't fucking around. Okay, this is not going to be easy. Because a lot of guys, when Titus was putting together his army, they were like, well, I'm gonna join up so I can get some easy promotions. We're not dealing with a fighting force here. These guys aren't trained. This is a peasant army behind walls. This will be fine. Now they were starting to realize that they were a little wrong in that assumption. You know what I mean? Yeah. As they're starting to set up some forward camps, one of them is sort of on the side from Mount Scopus, and it's a place called the Mount of Olives.
Oh, nice.
And that's where
sounds delicious.
Yeah.
That's where one legion is going to set up their camp. And as they're setting it up, another sortie comes out and starts, fucking with them, and they're totally unprepared. They didn't think they were going to do that.
They're so full up on olives.
Yeah.
And they're getting their asses kicked a little bit. And Titus himself has to come down with a small detachment and push them back.
He's put down the olives, pick up a fucking spear. You guys are a disgrace.
You know when you're hungry and you're like, what do I got? I got olives. I could eat a couple olives and eat the whole jar of olives.
Yeah.
That's what they're dealing with.
Well, and some of them started breaking and running, and Titus would scold them.
Don't make me run. I'm full of olives.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm on the olives still.
Yeah. So the first thing that they would have to do, first and foremost, is clear out all of those obstacles. Clear out all of it. So they did that under hail of fire, from rocks, stones.
They got rid of the Hall of Mirrors. They got rid of the spinning tunnel.
And replaced it with fucking rocks, bro.
Yeah. Well, because keep in mind that the Jews inside the city do have some of Cestius's old weapons that they took. You know what I mean? They have straight up Roman arms. They have a few of their siege
scorpions
weapons.
And,
Yeah. Like scorpions, those things that like fire those lances, rock throwers, things like that,
They have apes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember that? Bigfoot throwing rocks?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
They have a couple of T. Mitch's coveted apes.
T. Mitch doesn't give up those apes lightly.
Yeah.
What is this, like, what was that age of mythology where you could have like a big like god like
Cyclops.
throw rocks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I like that game. It was
yeah,
Age
it was
of
great.
Empires, but with like mythological characters.
Yeah, it was super cool.
You get an army of Anubises.
And what they would have to do, like, this blew my mind. Like, I had to like, now wait, am I reading this correctly? What they had to do is they had to basically make ramps, like, of earth up to the walls of the city in strategic areas. And to move their siege towers, right? Like, it's not like in the movies where you roll up the siege tower and then like the thing comes down and then you're on top of the walls. That's really not what it was.
Speaking
It was
of
like
Age of Empires.
yeah, it was like twofold is why you'd have these things. Like, as you were building the ramps for these, it would serve as your defense for building these earthworks, these big ramps, which some of them, I guess, can still be seen to this day. Like these big steep ramps.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's super crazy. You can
Did
see
they ever
them.
do like sick wheelies off of those ramps
Yeah.
or anything? Or?
No, it was very slow. They'd slide this big tower forward as they would get it done, and it would it would grind as they would do it, And they take wood and like pile up logs along these ramps to like shore it up. You know what I mean? So yeah, they stripped. I think 11 or 12 miles from the city, like in that radius of just all trees to build all this stuff. You know what I mean? And of course, you need it for like cooking fires and things like for that too. And it must have been a massive, massive effort, to get all this done. And they would pull tricks on them. They'd be like, "Hey, I surrender, and people would fall for it, and the Romans would go out, and then they'd get killed. They'd just get stabbed and shot with arrows and stuff.
These guys
kidding.
never surrender.
Yeah, pretty much. So now they were very distrustful for anything they would say, And the whole time, like, people are still able, like, within the city to, like, sneak out and go get food and bring it back into the city. They're all still able to sort of do this.
Pick up a pizza pie.
It would become less and less feasible to do that as the siege went on. And you'll see why.
Yeah, because like before the siege, the Jack in the Box closed at 2 a.m. But during the siege, it closed at 11 p.m. And it's just too early.
Well, and that brings up a really good point. Like, okay, if folks could sneak out of the city to go get food and then bring it back in, and starvation is a concern, why not just leave the city? Why not just sneak out and be gone?
Some of them would, like the Pharisees. The Pharisees did. They got out.
So Matthew hates those guys so much.
Well, yeah, I'll kind of explain that here in a second, but you're not far off. Basically, so as they're getting these towers close, in the bottom of the tower is a battering ram. You know what I mean? So you have levels of like archers, guys up in this tower, like trying to defend the people, digging all of this earth and piling it, closer and closer. Which, my God, just that must have been something to see.
It's like a trifle, but like every layer is something deadly.
Yeah, right. And so when they get up to the walls and like the tower is now even with the top of the walls, like they start to shake it, with that battering ram just, and everyone can feel it as they, and it has like the ram's head on it,
Grand. I know it's not it's a boar, but you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Do they throw zip lines and then go across with the knife in their teeth?
I wish.
Or do they do the sword or the spear or sword or object over the top and then they slide,
Yeah.
get down there and start, I'm doing a swashbuckling maneuver, folks.
It's actually really difficult like once you get on the walls, because once you get on the walls, you're kind of isolated. You're kind of alone. So you would only really do that in certain scenarios.
Yeah, it gets really lonely up there.
Yeah, real fast.
It's lonely at the top
Yeah.
of the wall.
Yeah. And as they're doing this, one of them all of a sudden just collapses and like totally falls over. This huge siege tower totally collapses.
That'd be in the trailer.
Yeah, it's because the Jews tunneled underneath it, underneath the earthworks, and then basically took out all the logs and then like set off an explosive, like, or burned all the logs out, and then it fell down.
That's cool. Insanely fucking like here's a move, here's a counter move. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, and then they would try to burn what was there, you know, in the melee. They'd try to burn that just to make it more chaotic. And they're like, God damn it. But it was one of multiple, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're knocking this wall down. They finally get a breach in the wall, and they basically just run back to the second wall. You know, they're like, all right, well, we kind of saw that coming. So they ran back to the second wall. Because meanwhile, as they're like really getting up close, like all the Roman stone throwers, like catapults and stuff, they're just decimating the new city. They're focusing all their fire on inside the city. And like it causes like psychological, you know, it's psychological warfare too. Because like all of a sudden there's this giant rock in the air, you know, that's coming down upon you.
The second city, that's not under attack at the moment?
This is the new city.
Yeah.
The second city is behind that second wall that they just retreated to.
The second city's fucked. Or, no.
It's
opposite.
still...
I get you.
Yeah. There's the old city, second city, new city.
This is why Bob Odenkirk went from SNL to Second City, which is usually the other way around.
If I'm not mistaken, that siege tower that was taken down by the groundlings. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Did I mention that John of Gishala killed Eleazar? Maybe, probably. We don't really know. There was a small coup attempt, and like he killed him or drove away his forces. Anyway, it's not super important, but
by himself?
No,
with his guys,
they were gonna like set up a meeting,
okay.
and instead of a meeting, John of Gishala comes in with like swords out and shit. He either runs away. He either runs away, or he gets captured, and then he's fighting again. It's unclear. Anyway.
And then he stopped, dropped, locked him down, open up shop.
Stop, drop.
Shut him down, open up shop. Yeah.
Now, a lot of the rocks that they were throwing into the city were naturally white, or sometimes even painted white, until they realized that at night you could see them really well, so they started painting them black.
But if you paint them white, then they're gonna just think it's the moon, and they're gonna be like, "Come look at the moon! It's huge."
Well, it's weird that you say that, because like they would say like sun is falling, but it was like rock is coming is what that meant. You know what I mean? Yeah, but like literally translated or whatever it meant. Like sun is coming.
The moon looks huge.
Yeah.
Tonight. Oh wait, it looks even bigger. And
I believe there's a song written about it. When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie. That's a rock from a rock thrower.
Yeah.
That song is actually a lot of people don't know, is about the siege of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
There was one guy up on the walls that he was up there, but earlier he was this like kind of guru guy that just kept saying, "Woe is me, woe is Jerusalem, woe is Israel," and like he just kept saying that. That's all he would say. So like they took him to like the Roman procurator, and they're like, "Why are you saying that?" And like he would just answer with the same, "Woe is me, woe is Jerusalem." So they had him flogged to the bone. And every time they would hit him, he would be like, "Woe is me, woe is Jerusalem."
This guy sounds like a fucking bummer.
Well, and
it's Keanu Reeves. He was saying, "Whoa, it's me. Whoa, I'm in Jerusalem." whoa, it's me, Keanu Reeves. And he had time traveled.
He's
Yeah.
like, whoa.
Well,
I'm in
clearly,
Jerusalem.
it was Bill S. Preston Esquire. Or
Yeah.
Ted Theodore Logan. Either way, it's the one that's Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
And so, he got there. And he was like, whoa. And then he was he was flogged to death. And that's how his character story ends.
Well, no, this guy survived because they thought he was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
They thought he was crazy. So he ends up in Jerusalem. He ends up on the wall, like with the other defenders, saying the same thing. And they're like, man, will you knock that off? And then as he says, like, woe to the Jerusalemites, he gets hit in the head with a stone that kills him. Like from a stone thrower that like completely takes him out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how Keanu Reeves' character from Bill and Ted died.
Yeah.
And then the movie just kind of ends.
Goes to credits right after that.
Yeah, he gets hit in the head with the rock. The blood hits the top of the tower, and it forms the words "the end" with a question mark. And the box office receipts did not warrant a sequel, so the question mark stays.
It was unnecessary. It was
esoteric.
And unanswered. It's like the search for the golden compass. The golden compass ends on a
that right?
Golden
cliffhanger.
treasure.
Yeah.
Search for the golden. What is that?
It ends on a cliffhanger, but they never
Yeah.
made any others. So
Didn't they make
They
a
did.
show?
Yeah, they made a whole show.
oh,
Well,
Okay.
it's not. It's
Doesn't
based
count.
off the same books, but it's not.
Is this the one with the talking?
Yeah,
bear.
his Dark
Polar bear.
Materials.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
His
yeah,
Dark
yeah.
Materials is based off the same book series as the Golden Compass.
And Sam
Only-
Elliott was in the movie, and his character was played by Lin-Manuel Miranda in the show.
It's
That
choice. But the polar bear CGI is way better in the TV show because it came out like a decade later.
Yeah.
when they got to the new city, they knew they still had to be really careful because, again, house to house urban warfare is not really what the Roman military is built for. You know what I mean? It's not really for that. So they had to be really cautious because anywhere there could be, you know, bad guys that could come out of a secret passageway or something. And it would happen multiple times, you know, but what they did in order to be closer is they set up another camp right next to that breach, basically, in the new city. They were like, well, there's the second wall, got to do all this again. So they built more earthworks for the second wall. It's just crazy the amount of manpower you must have needed.
They have to build
you know.
infrastructure to take down infrastructure.
And not like small infrastructure. Like, this is huge undertakings. Huge. And like before there's like backhoes and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Well, there's probably like foremans for each tower, right? That are making sure that everything's done the right way. They've done this a million times.
There's a whole command structure. Yep. There's specialists. And these specialists, they basically are consultants in how to build the towers, how to maintain the towers, how to move the towers, things like this. How to build the earthworks. Yeah, it's a well thought out machine. You know what I mean? And while this is all happening, Titus realizes that like people are still sneaking out, and he wants to put a stranglehold on the city. So he builds a wall of circumvallation. And basically his new wall is going to go through the new city where he is, right? And it's going to go around the rest of the city, right? And what this will do, and he'll send like cavalry, patrols around it to make sure like no one's getting out of the walls. And this will really choke them off. Now they're really cut off from everything. You know what I mean? They would find tunnels as they built this wall, and like he had them compete too. Like, I'll give more pay for the first one to complete your section of the wall. You
get a pizza party.
Yeah.
They are Italian.
You get a custom musical experience.
Yeah. Of course, there were people that tried to still sneak out after this because
to go on dates and stuff.
Well,
it's like a teenager trying to go to the party that the parents said they couldn't go to.
Well, famine is gripping the city is really what the problem is. So there are people that are sneaking out, and the thing is if you were successful, which very few were. But if you were, the people in the city would rob you of your food. And, you know, like the reign of terror kind of continued because they would come into your house and like demand food. And if they didn't find any, then they would be like, oh, well, you hid it too well. And then they would beat you for that, you know? Or, you know, if you were emaciated, they'd be like, oh, this guy doesn't have food. We'll just leave him alone.
Yeah.
You know, they just assumed they didn't have
You just
any.
don't eat, and then you're like, feast like a king at the end of all this.
Well, don't do that because your stomach will burst and you will die.
Yeah. That does happen.
Joke's on you.
Which
I'm
definitely
actually a
happens.
runway model. I don't have any food. I spent my food money on cocaine and cigarettes.
Yeah, that ballerina doesn't have any food for sure.
Yeah.
She's
Now,
got so much food.
If you were caught outside of the city, the Romans would take you and then crucify you in front of the walls of Jerusalem.
How embarrassing.
Like
And-
literally crucify you, or just like destroy you on Yelp?
Yeah.
They would crucify you. They
You
would
get canceled.
they wouldn't always nail people to crosses. They would at least tie you to a cross.
Yeah. They don't got all day.
So you can, I mean, tying someone to a cross definitely prolongs the suffering.
Mm-hmm.
You die sometimes of
Starvation? Or
starvation sometimes. Sometimes you can just die of asphyxiation.
Broken heart.
Yeah.
No.
You're like, I
But-
love Rome.
Like the Romans, I mean, when they got bored, they would nail them into different positions on crosses. You know
Oh,
what I
that
mean?
sounds fun.
Because this would happen so often. Josephus says it happened 500 a day, which seems like an unthinkable number. And who knows if that number is true or not. But it does... It's interesting that he also mentions that they ran out of crosses and they ran out of places to put the crosses. There were that many surrounding the city. The problem with it, though, is that the people in the city were using it as their own propaganda. That's why
Right.
we fight to the last man. That's why we don't run over to the Roman side. You know, that will happen.
Yeah.
They're
yeah,
animals
yeah.
who crucify and we're better than them.
Yeah, right. And sometimes they would make it to the Roman camps begging for food. And Titus ordered to have their hands chopped off and then tied on a string. You know, one hand on one side of the string, then the other hand on the other side of the string. Then they would put it like over your neck like a scarf, and then they would send you back into the city as a
Do
warning.
they just continue to like wearing their own hand scarf, or they're like,
Well-
these are my own hands. I don't want to toss them out.
Well, they would drape it over you and then shove you back into the city. So you know,
What you did at that point with the hands was your business.
yeah.
They're
Well,
like,
and-
hey,
It's
no
between
skin
you
off
and
my
God.
back. At least the dog wants to play with me.
Yeah.
He wants these little hands.
Bobbing and weaving. Can get the hands.
Now, the ones that they did accept into the Roman camps and that they gave food to, some of them did eat too fast, and their
that's
stomachs
one,
burst and
yeah.
they died. And then some of them, they were looking at them, and they caught a couple of them picking gold coins out of their poop.
Uh-oh.
And they were like, really?
Wait a minute.
So now there's a bunch of Romans that like are seeing gold, and they start cutting open all of these Jews. They start cutting them open looking for gold.
Their eyes turned into gold coins when they saw that.
And like Titus is like, you gotta stop. Like this is a disgusting thing. It's like, stop it. But like they did it anyway. Like they would go over to like the crucified people and like slice them open looking for like gold pieces and shit.
Did they
Like,
find some?
gnarly? Yeah, sometimes they would because they'd swallow it, you know, because
Yeah.
you know they want to get shit when they leave, you know.
Yeah. Because otherwise,
Bad news is we killed a bunch of people and there's poop everywhere.
Yeah.
The worst news is these guys eat a lot of corn. And I thought a bunch of it was gold, and I did the tooth thing, and so I've been eating a lot of poop, and I'm getting pretty sick from it. So
I've been
I
eating a
need to
lot
go
of
home.
popcorn.
Eating a lot of poop corn.
I need to go home for the
I
day.
need to go home now. I ate too much poop corn.
Taking a half day.
And they were like, granted, you can go home.
Sacrifice accepted.
Yeah. So the situation within the city is just getting more and more desperate. The people within the city, they are taking the dead because, again, it's illegal to bury the dead within the city. Mm-hmm. So they're throwing them over the walls, and it was meant to really disgust the Roman readers and also his Jewish readers, but he forgets to mention certain things. This is another more evidence why Josephus isn't some sort of expert in Jewish law. He gets a lot wrong about what he also plagiarizes a lot. He uses different events from different battles that he absolutely read and was a big fan of in Greek antiquity.
It's like Carlos Mencia.
Yeah.
More like Josephus Menstelia.
Nice.
Fucking got him.
Yeah, got him good.
But the poor, the rich, the young, the old, everyone was fighting for food. The poor, of course, ran out of food first. Mm-hmm. It was going for...
the rich didn't share?
Yeah.
And how unlike them.
Yeah, right. And food was going for like, years worth of wages, you know what I mean? Because they were still making like 97% silver coins at this time, so people could still pay the temple tithe.
Well,
like they were still doing that as the war is as the Romans are knocking down pieces of their wall. Like it's crazy how
war
they
can end at any time.
It was so important,
Well, if you think God's pissed for killing that chicken, imagine how he'll feel if you stop tithing.
Well, it's not killing the chicken, right?
Yes, I was joking.
Yeah, it was murders inside the temple.
It was sacrificing. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
I created my own narrative that I thought was much funnier.
Then, of course, they turned to grass and plants. They would sometimes
I thought you meant they turned into grass.
Yeah, well, they would eventually. They would go down into the sewers and cisterns and eat food in secret there. They would also have to search the sewers for food, and they would search dung for food as well. Mm-hmm. When it got to that point,
they only found these useless gold coins.
Exactly.
I was hoping for corn.
Yeah. I was hoping for some poop corn.
They didn't have corn in this time period in history.
No, not where this is either.
That's my issue with this.
This is from O. Henry's secret pile of stories that have been banned.
Yeah. Then, of course, some people resorted to cannibalism. Right? Nothing new in sieges. This happens all the time in sieges. But however, there's this one story, right, of this woman who she was well-to-do. I don't know if that means anything, but she was well-to-do, and she roasted her own son over a fire.
Bam, roasted.
Jesus Christ. Ate half of him, and then saved the rest for later. And when the soldiers came in looking for food, the zealots came in looking for it, she showed them what it was. And she was like, go ahead, eat up. Like, don't feel like, I forget what she actually says in Josephus, but it's like, don't be more emotional than a woman or its mother, And I guess they did not eat it. They left shaking, is what he says. But it fulfills like a prophecy and da-da-da-da-da. Maybe this happened, maybe it didn't, who knows.
Yeah.
She's like, took 14 hours to come out and only 5 minutes to go back in. It's going to take another 8 hours to come back out again. Bada bing, bada boom.
Oh my God.
She was a stand-up.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
One of those people who they're just crass, I don't know why they gotta say all those dirty words.
Anyway, I'm going to go back to eating my child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd eat my cat.
Titus, of course, he would say, he would look up and go, God witnessed this, I didn't do this, things like this. Why is Titus speaking to the Jewish God? I don't know. Is this some sort of justification?
Because he was there.
Well, it's just so Titus looks good,
Yeah. Well, Also, it sounds way like, why did you make me hit you again?
Oh yeah, stop hitting yourself. Why'd you make me do this? And once they built this wall of circumvallation too, like they brought out food and put it in front of the wall. They're like, look at all this food we got. Look at all this food we got. You know, and they'd throw rocks at him and stuff and try to get him to go away. And Josephus even would walk around the outside of the gate and he would be like, you guys, why are you, like, spare your city, spare your temple. We're going to burn it to the ground if you don't surrender. You have to surrender. Why are you doing this to yourself? It is way that, you know.
Stop running for the pile of food. It's a trap.
Yeah. It's a impasse, you know what I mean? Where there's no logic or reasoning that can get you out of that, you know, out of that impasse, you know. That's just how it has to happen now. And actually, they hit him in the head. They hit Josephus in the head with a rock, and it knocked him unconscious.
Cool.
And they thought he was dead. They brought him back out to show that he wasn't dead. But there was much rejoicing when they thought they had killed him, because they didn't like him very much.
When he woke up, he explained his vision of the flux capacitor to them. The circuit that makes time travel possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's how Keanu Reeves eventually went back and was flayed alive.
Josephus is George Carlin from those movies.
But also Doc Brown, kind of.
Yeah, same.
I
don't think about it
so
too much.
Lost in this metaphor.
Yeah.
He's Doc Brown. And Bruno, was that the name of the character?
Rufus, man.
Rufus.
Yeah.
I don't know. Those movies are okay.
Yeah. Now, meanwhile, the second wall was much more difficult than the first. Another one of their siege engines fell down again. Same thing happened to it. And this happens a lot in sieges too. There's a lot of tunneling, a lot of things like that. You know, that's how you really bring down walls, really. Now, when they first breached the second wall, they realized that they had built like a new wall right behind it. You know what I mean? Like
God damn it!
They were like, "Oh shit! Yeah, now we got to do this."
It's walls all the way down.
Yeah. So they started hammering away at that one as well.
I hope they painted like the world behind it on the second wall.
Yeah, so there's like a sun.
They painted the tunnel, and they're like, "Oh, we made it.
We can run right
as fast
through
as we can."
Dag-nabbit.
Like fucking
Wile E. Coyote.
Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah.
Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah. Now, this was a frustrating part of the siege. So Titus, he's like, "Look, I will heap honors upon you if you can capture the top of that wall. If you can capture the top of that wall, in particular, if we can really take the Antonia fort that sort of guards the temple. If you can take the top of that, I swear to God, you're going to be commander of the people that are next to you now." So like this guy, Sabinus, in the middle of the hot day, this is summertime, right? In fucking Jerusalem. In the middle of the day, takes a group up there, and for a second, they are doing okay, but are quickly outnumbered. He slips, and he falls, and his Roman plate armor kind of pins him to the ground.
Oh, God.
And he dies. He gets stabbed to death, you know?
Accidentally shoots himself with his own shotgun.
Yeah. So that didn't work, and this is in like full view of everyone, you know. And
How
it's
embarrassing!
Like, yeah,
I bet his wife was like,
They're like, he wasn't a very important one. He stole that armor. He was one of our. He just started. He was one of the lowest guys. Everybody hated him. He wasn't well liked at all.
Had really bad, really bad jokes.
So there was
and breath.
Yeah,
there was another there was another sortie for this particular area. This time they would wait until 3:00 in the morning, which is a better time to do something like this. So it's this small group, and they go up there, and it's like a trumpeter, a standard bearer to show that like we are here, you know, and then like a couple other dudes, and they sneak up on top of the walls. They find them sleeping up there. They slit their throats real quick. And once they have their kind of immediate area totally secured, the trumpeter, with this big old trumpet that like wraps around you. I'm sure Aaron Weed would know more about it than me. He, blasts the trumpet, that boom, and like that's really close to where they're normally used to hearing it.
It's like right in my fucking ear, dude.
So like
there's still like blood leaking out of a guy's neck, and they're like 1, 2, 3, 4. Well,
like everybody that was around like shit themselves, first of all, and like Titus is like, oh shit, they're on the walls, and like quickly starts sending like guys in.
Yeah. They have
also,
yard margaritas. It's Fat Tuesday up there.
It sort of stalemates into this bloody close quarters combat. You know what I mean? And it's really bad. It's at night, and they can't see well at night. And because the zealots are wearing like Roman, arms. Sometimes they can't tell who's friend and who's foe. When you're fighting that close. So they have to retreat, and they retreat back like inside like the Antonia. So they have the Antonia. They need to get rid of it in order to like get through into the temple courtyard and take the temple. So they basically have another like close quarters night battle. It ends inconclusively. It's like this happens again and again. And the Romans are taking it as, victory, and the Zealots are taking as victory, even though they're kind of both being defeated,
Yeah.
So just before, like, they're really going to make the final push to get inside the temple complex, they have this meeting. Titus has this meeting with his generals, and it's like a famous meeting where he's like, what is going to be done about this temple? Do we burn it to the ground? Do we spare it? What is it? It is a modern, to him, it is a modern wonder of the world. It is this beautiful temple. And again, how Josephus says.
He's like, it's a big, beautiful temple. I respect it. I respect the Jewish people. I certainly wouldn't want to destroy it. But sometimes I'm forced to do things where I disrespect things that I choose not to.
Exactly.
My hands were tied, and I burnt the fucking thing to the ground.
Yeah. So he basically decides, like, look, if it's going to be this way, it's going to be this way. And here's the thing. When you're in a siege like this, your soldiers are going to hate being there, watching their friends die next to them. Living through a siege is rough on both people. So when you set, like, this ravenous Roman horde, on a city that's been trying to kill you, they're going to go nuts. They're going to lose their minds. They're going to burn fucking everything. You know what I mean?
It's like, I can't control what my men do.
Yeah. And somehow, right up until this point, the 2-a-day lamb sacrifices had gone on. Somehow, it had gone on until this point, and now they ran out of lambs, and God had left them, basically.
God's gonna be pissed. He's gonna be starving. He was expecting that.
Yeah.
He was expecting that lamb.
Yeah.
And once again, regular old people can't eat any of that meat, huh?
No.
It's way that
it's ridiculous. John of Gashala, though, goes in there and eats it, and he's like, what? What's wrong with eating consecrated food?
Yeah. Oh,
King
my goodness.
David ate consecrated food.
Yeah. You think you're better than David?
Yeah, exactly. He's like, we're at war. We should do this. Not everyone agreed.
It's that Mitchell and Webb thing where they can't eat the Christmas ham.
Exactly.
Is that what it is?
But they're starving. Yeah.
It's like, we are English.
Yeah. Now, when the Antonia fell, when they actually did make it into the courtyard, like the Zealots made like a last-ditch sort of effort out to the Mount of Olives again to try to make it look like, to try to steer them away. It didn't work. It didn't work at all.
They wanted to go there to show that they were family.
Yep.
There was a guy that challenged the Romans to a duel.
No.
He was like, "You're all cowards. You're not gonna, come out and face me."
He was dressed in full samurai gear.
Yeah.
Well, and all the guys like there were like, "Dude, your temple's gonna fall. The siege is gonna be over. It's stupid to like go into a duel. Like that's dumb." But one guy did. It was a little, duel, and he slipped, and also he was killed.
Wait, The guy was like, I challenge you to a duel.
Yeah.
Slipped on like a fucking banana peel or whatever.
Yeah.
Fucking
No, the
cracked
Roman.
his skull.
The Roman
Oh.
did. But right after, like, you know, the Jewish guy was victorious, like, a Roman arrow hit him directly in the head. And that was that. And it's just like a metaphor for, like, how this whole thing is going to go.
I thought if I had beaten the one dude in a duel, they'd all go home.
Yeah.
And it was dishonorable them to not.
There was also another guy that called for peace, and like Titus was like, "What do you want?" He's like, I want to come down under your protection, and we're gonna talk about this." And so he's listening to him, which is weird that Titus would like allow this, but like,
And this man was John Lennon.
well, as he's sort of talking, a Roman archer shoots the guy in the face, in the nose, with an arrow. And the guy pulls the arrow out of his face.
Because I'm not done yet.
So anyway, give peace a chance.
And he's like, "What the fuck? What's wrong with you? I was trying to come down. You shoot me in the face with an arrow." And like,
Wait,
then,
he's not.
you know,
So he wasn't dead.
no, he was alive. He pulls the arrow out.
I bet you he wishes he died.
Yeah, they kept fighting after that. They just
Yeah.
kept going after that.
His entire nasal cavity was exposed.
Yeah. He's like, this fight, I'm in it, I'm on it. I don't want the war to end because I'm going to have to go home and explain what happened to my wife. I think that it's going to be a very doggy style centric rest of my life.
She has made it very clear that if I came home disfigured, she would leave me. She brought it up too often.
Yeah. We were joking early on, and then she just kept on bringing it up, being like, "Remember, disfigured."
Not good for me.
Don't even bother coming back.
Yeah.
Now, as the Romans made it into the courtyard, it was really close quarters. It was extremely bloody. But when they made it to the gates, they were like, "Fuck it, burn the gates." So they set fire to the gates. They burned their way into the temple. As they were going inside the temple, like, Titus goes down into like the Holy of Holies, where only the priests could go up until like this moment. And like, he goes down and sees all of the things, you know, where God is present but invisible. You know, he sees the food, he sees the menorah, he sees, you know, the menorah that God told Moses to make. He sees all those things.
I have a question, actually.
Yeah.
If God is invisible, when he eats the food, can you see it go down his throat?
See, I have questions about this too. Is this Casper style? Like, you see like the food sort of get jumbled up and then it just falls in like muck on the floor?
Yeah.
Well, he's not actually invisible. It's the outer layer of his skin bends light, and so technically anything that he eats would be camouflaged by the rest of his body.
So you just see it. Yeah, you see.
But there's no
you see the
poop.
bites come out and they disappear.
He doesn't poop it. Yeah, he doesn't poop it out. God doesn't poop.
Well, he does poop it out. You just see the poop come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
What do they do with God's poop?
He just poops on the floor. They push it to the side.
They push it to the side.
They throw it.
It's God. He can fucking shit wherever he wants, Jerry.
I'm just saying, like, God shit, like, wouldn't that be worth something or something? You know, wouldn't that
They
be
didn't
have
think
some?
of that.
Yeah, they're like, I never even thought of it. I was throwing it out this whole time.
The first guy thought like you thought, and he was like, "I bet you it's delicious, guys." And then he's like, "Nope, tastes the same."
Maybe even
And that is the second eating poop joke that I have made in this episode.
He's like, I know exactly what shit tastes like because
Yeah.
I've eaten a lot of poop corn,
Yeah,
and this tastes exactly like that minus the corn.
yeah. You know what? I'm a fucking survivor, okay? And it gets me rock hard.
Yeah.
So it's a two thing.
Yeah, it's win-win for old Sanchez.
Yeah.
His name is Sanchez.
Yeah.
Well, basically, the day this happened, when Titus enters the temple and he sacrifices a pig on the altar, really just making it unclean forever.
And delicious.
Yeah. Oh.
This is on the Jewish calendar, of course, is much different than ours, than the Gregorian calendar. This takes place on the 9th day of Av, and it can fall in August or July, depending on the year. it's the same day as the fall of like Solomon's temple, the first temple, right? This is the second temple, right, that they had. So it was the same day as that, and the ninth day of Av is also it's a day of remembrance. There's a bunch of other stuff that happened on this day, you know, in the Holocaust, in Spain during the expulsion of the Jews in Spain, and the forcible conversions. That it is a day where people fast. They don't cut their hair. They don't, you know, cut their beards or anything. Weeks before Tisha B'Av, that's what they call it, Tisha B'Av, you don't have marriages or anything like that. It's a very solemn time for the Jewish people, and it's right here that really adds to it and really galvanizes it too, because it's right after this that it's a really big deal, because a lone Roman soldier right after they do this throws a firebrand into the temple and sets it alight, and it burns like a towering inferno. And like Josephus writes about how hot it was, so hot that the silver on the doors melt.
Oh wow.
Which I think it would have to be like 1700 degrees or something like that. It spreads to the rest of the city. It's so hot. You know what I mean? At which point the Romans start looting everything. Everything inside the temple that's worth any value is looted. There's a lot. There's an incredible amount of money that they take. They start looting and killing indiscriminately in the second city. Resistance has started to break down at this point, and they basically pulled everyone back into the first wall of the upper city. Behind that wall, it's the thickest. It's the biggest wall there. After this, anyone that comes to Titus with, "Can we please have peace?" Any sort of peace talks enrages him. He's like, right after I burn your fucking temple, now you want to surrender to me? Now you do? It's like, I wanted to spare this place. I wanted to spare your temple. You know what I mean?
You made me look like an asshole.
Yeah. No, is what he said. And, he would.
And just to remind the viewers at home, this is according to
Josephus.
Josephus's account
of course, events. Yeah. All of this is with the heavy caveat Josephus tells us. And here's the thing. No one spoke Latin there. Yeah. Titus couldn't talk to them directly. He needed Josephus as an interpreter.
Translator, yeah.
Right, yeah. So keep in mind, every time, like, Titus, like, gives a speech, like, he'll give, like, a 6-page speech in Josephus.
Like, okay.
There's no way he ever made a 6-page speech. No way. And, like, in Latin, no. You know? Like, and then there's other times where Josephus says, like, in the mother tongue. And people are like, well, is that Aramaic? Because most people would have spoken Aramaic in this area. Or is it Hebrew? Although less and less people are speaking Hebrew at this time. So who knows? But anyway, keep in mind, Josephus. So the slaughter is intense within the second city, the lower city. It's absolutely intense. And John of Gischala and Simon Bar Giora are, behind the walls, the last set of walls. They know this is the end. They basically look at each other and they're like, remember that pact to, like, fight to the death? It's like, well, here I am. So they're going to make, like, this last stand. You know what I mean? And they do ask for peace with Titus, but those talks break down because they're like, let us take our weapons and we'll just run off into the desert or something. And he's like, no, no, I'm not. I'm not going to let, like, the hero John of Gischala or the hero Simon Bar Giora, who formed, like, the first ever Jewish navy to, like, leave the city. It's not going to happen.
And they're going to come back dressed as some, like, rich fop. To Rome, and they're going to be like, who is this new duke?
Yeah, and it's Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah, it's Count of Monte Cristo.
Well, and I'd like to think that John of Gischala was like, remember that pact we made? And Bar Giora was like, that if we weren't married by the time we were 40, we'd both get married together. And he's like, no, the suicide pact. If we're, and he's like, oh, yeah.
He's like, I wasn't taking that one seriously.
Yeah.
He's like, neither was I. Neither was I.
It's like, where have you been these past few days?
Yeah. It's like daydreaming, apparently.
Yeah. So, the Romans were able to get past the last and final wall, at which point they conducted a systematic, brutal house-by-house slaughter of the upper city.
That sucks.
Yeah, and they would open like doors and like look inside, and there's like whole families just dead of starvation inside. There were bodies like already, like they were amazed to find how many bodies were just already on the street when they came into like these parts of the city, that had been under siege for a while. Like they're just dead people everywhere. They're already dead. John of Gishala surrenders. They don't find Simon Bar Giora right away. He tunnels. He tries to tunnel out of the city with a couple people he hires. He gets like a couple of stonecutters, and they grab like enough food to last them maybe long enough. And they go tunneling, but it's taken way too long.
Yeah, he's just hiding in the walls like Bruno.
Yeah. So basically, like, Titus, he orders the city to be like totally demolished, right? Like almost completely ripped and taken down. We'll catch up with Simon Bar Giora here in a second. His troops are like, Imperator, Imperator, which usually means you're emperor now.
Yeah.
But when
I'm
you
totally
read it,
emperor now.
but when you read it in Josephus, it's a little different than normal Roman history, because when they do that, they're like, he means the Flavian dynasty.
Yeah.
The Flavian dynasty is what they actually mean, not literally Titus is the new emperor.
Unless you're cool with that, in which case,
Yeah, like, but no, you're not. Oh,
No,
okay,
no,
you're right.
Yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah. Survivors were sold into slavery. Women and children mainly. Any of like the tall, handsome ones, or big and tough ones, they were put in chains to march in the Flavian triumph, Vespasian and Titus's triumph in Rome.
You want the good-looking guys there.
Yeah, and also to go die in the gladiatorial games held in the Circus Maximus.
look at all these handsome slaves I brought home, and everyone's like, yeah, way better than ugly ones.
Yeah.
Well, and when Titus actually got to Caesarea, it was his little brother Domitian's 18th birthday. So they had gladiatorial games in Caesarea where they used Jews captured in Jerusalem as like people fighting each other. So like they died in these games for Domitian's 18th birthday. Crazy shit.
Well, and it's good because the lions in the games were also Jewish, so they got to eat kosher.
Dear Lord. Now, Josephus, as he's sort of going through before they really wreck the entire city, he finds family members, that are still alive. He even finds 3 dudes that are nailed to crosses that he knows. And he asks Titus if he can take them down. And 2 of the guys die right away. But the 3rd guy survived. That I could not imagine. Surviving a crucifixion, I could not imagine.
I was expecting Titus to be like, if I cut these 3 guys down, then I gotta cut those 3 guys down. And he's like, so I can't do it, right?
But I'm prophetic.
Josephus is just like, yeah, I guess.
I'm prophetic, though. Now, it is assumed that John of Gishala was among these people taken to Rome to march in the triumph and either be executed on the day of the triumph or die in the gladiatorial games. Now, Josephus, he goes back with Titus, and he gets a pension. He gets to be a Roman citizen. He becomes Titus Flavius Josephus. That's his new name. And he gets to do that now. He gets to write about this whole engagement. He makes a whole history of the Jewish people too. That sounds a lot like the Bible. But it's for his Roman readers, right? And he gets a lot wrong in there. Again, he's not some Jewish scholar like he claims to be. And he writes about the war, and he writes about the war in a glowing way. You know what I mean? And yeah, they're looking over his shoulder the entire time. So of course it's going to turn out that way.
Yeah.
You know, and they pay the bills. But it's thought that it was September 26th, 70 CE, that Jerusalem was finally and fully sacked. And then it was garrisoned with Roman troops. It was given a new name. Now, when this happened, Simon Bar Giora emerges out of like a hole in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And like everyone that's there is like, what the fuck? Because like he's in this white shroud, and like he comes up out of this hole, you know? And they're like scared at first. They think, what is this, a ghost?
Yeah, it's like, it is I, Simon Bar Giora.
Yeah.
And they're like, ghost. And he's like, oh no, I'm a duke. Duke of something.
They scamper away like in Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, and then they run through the doors in the hallway. And,
and then they're all in a band together.
Yeah, they're all playing in a band.
Yeah. He was like, let me speak to Titus. I gotta speak to Titus. And they figure out who he is, and they send him to Titus. And Titus is like, ho, you're coming to Rome with me. You know? So he marches in the triumph. Here's what Josephus says about Simon Bar Giora. He says, quote, he was kept for the emperor's triumph at Rome, where he was dragged through the streets and then hurled from the Tarpeian rock.
Whoa.
Most historians today think he was just brought to the Temple of Jupiter and executed there, but whatever. Same
throw him off the wall.
Throw him off a rock.
They love cruel and unusual punishment. That's
they do. That's like their main thing.
Yeah, they're like the part that you guys got where that's illegal. That's the part where you gotta do it that way here.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want the usual punishment.
Even Vespasian was like, you know, they fight for stupid things like freedom and liberty. Yeah. You guys fight for the glory of Rome.
That's way better.
You know? So there you go. The city was pretty much burned to the ground except for a couple of towers and one section of the western wall. This is called the Wailing Wall now, right? And this is from Josephus. Quote, this wall was spared in order to afford a camp for such as were to lie in garrison in the upper city, as were the towers, the 3 forts, also spared, in order to demonstrate to posterity what kind of city it was and how well fortified, which the Roman valor had subdued. But for all the rest of the wall surrounding Jerusalem, it was so thoroughly laid even with the ground by those that dug it up to the foundation, that there was left nothing to make those that came thither believe it, meaning Jerusalem, had ever been inhabited. End quote. Hardcore. So they did all of that just to show what a magnificent city it was before the Romans laid waste to it.
What they did to it.
Yeah. It's
That's
fucking
wild.
chilling. Yeah.
Nice city you got there. Be a shame if something happened to it.
Yeah.
But like past tense?
Be ashamed if you made me do something to it.
Yeah.
You know?
That was like Titus's whole thing.
Yeah. Now, Josephus says that 1.1 million died in this siege. That is almost certainly false.
That's probably like the population of the world at the time.
It's just impossible. Yeah. Historians agree that it was probably closer to around 97,000. Okay, maybe 100,000.
Still a lot of people.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's nothing to sneeze at, but it's a lot. It's no 1.1 million. Now, at Titus and Vespasian's triumph, the 700 Jews were taken to Rome, and after they were marched in chains, they were sold into slavery or executed at the Temple of Jupiter, or, of course, forced to fight in the games in the Circus Maximus. And in that, they displayed their spoils that they got from the temple. This is depicted on the Arch of Titus, which is in Rome today. You can see the triumph on the inside of the temple, where they're holding the menorah and they're holding the table of the bread of God's presence. You can see them carrying that through the streets. Now, it's still I believe it's still a thing today that Jews do not pass under this arch. Also, they don't go underneath it.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, because of what happened. What happened? The Romans took so much gold from Jerusalem that the price of gold, the value of gold, fell by 50% in Syria. 50%. They took so much of it that the price fell by 50%. That's amazing. That's a shit ton of gold. You know what I mean?
That's just the invisible hand of the market, Jerry.
Yeah. Now, history, of course, is kind to both of the Flavians, Vespasian and Titus, because of Josephus. Although
they wrote it.
Yeah, right. It's interesting that neither takes the title Judaicus. Now, this could either be for pure anti-Semitism, or it could be because they thought of it as Romans fighting Romans. Whereas Germanicus, right, or Britannicus, those were people outside of the Roman yoke. You know what I mean? Maybe that's why they didn't take the title Judaicus. I don't really, I'm not an expert or anything, but it has been a question why neither has taken that title.
Yeah.
It could be for a couple of different reasons. The Flavian, especially Vespasian and Titus, they really put Rome on a more stable footing after, that year of the 4 emperors. Shit was really bad there for a while. And they kind of just gave it stability. And with stability, they had all these building works. They built aqueducts. They built the Flavian Amphitheater, otherwise known as the Colosseum. Vespasian started that. They did all of this. All of this was possible with the spoils of the war in Judea and this siege as well.
I mean, this was not long after the fire, so they needed.
Yeah.
So it actually kind of, went the other way for them.
Yeah. And so much of it was done with this money. It was actually opened, the Colosseum was opened under Titus, but it wasn't finished until Domitian was emperor. The Pharisees would come out on top in just sort of who was left of the Jews. Because basically now they were all on the run, and basically just ever since. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like when they literally don't have a temple.
Well,
you know what I mean?
And so like the Sadducees are totally, who gives a shit? You don't have a temple anymore.
Like, we don't have a temple, so
so they're gone. Everyone else has been killed in the war. Basically modern rabbinic Judaism is pharisaical, is from the Pharisees, right? Jesus was a Pharisee, right?
Yeah.
And this is why, like, you get like these conspiracy theories that like Josephus wrote the Gospels, right? That the Romans sort of made up this idea of Jesus to further divide and conquer the Jews, right? We know that Mark was written during, from 66 to 70, is written during this conflict, which is interesting. And it's also interesting that, like, the guy that the people, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, take instead of Jesus, they save instead, his name was Barabbas. He was a revolutionary who was, killed people during an uprising, a Jewish uprising. They take him instead. Of course they do. Not somebody claiming to be their Messiah. There would have been, there were a bunch of dudes claiming to be the Jewish Messiah at this time. Okay?
Much like today.
Right. So they didn't take him, right? They didn't take him. They said, well, the blood is on our hands. That doesn't mean for all the Jewish people. That means these people. Okay, well, the blood's on our hands, right? That's ludicrous to assume anything other than that. I'm not even Jewish, guys. you know? I'm just saying all of this, it makes so much sense when you go back and you read the Gospels with this lens. Because the books that are written afterwards, you see that, like, Mark, he's going to reappear in Jerusalem. Well, now that Jerusalem's sort of gone, after that, in Matthew, he reappears on a hill in Galilee, right? Yeah, in Luke, it's in a village 7 miles from Jerusalem, right? And they are scolded for not even recognizing him at first, right? It just gets more and more. In John, he's outside the tomb, and then he's at the Sea of Galilee, and the Doubting Thomas and all of this stuff. So
Oh, Thomas.
yeah, it just
so it's like, I don't know about that.
Yeah. And, it says things like the Pharisees who so loved their money, and like, yeah. And they make all these, there's all these claims that like the Christians made it out of Jerusalem before this happened.
They were
Josephus
cool.
doesn't,
It's just all the people who weren't down.
yeah. Well, Josephus doesn't mention it. So they were either completely irrelevant or it didn't happen. Yeah, that's just what the two options are, right?
Yeah.
I feel like maybe the truth's somewhere in between.
Well, maybe, but here's the thing: is there was another passage added to Josephus that talks about Jesus Christ being the Messiah. It was added much later in the 3rd century by like a Christian monk,
right? Yeah,
or 3rd or 5th century by a Christian monk. And it was in the 19th century, late 19th century, when they proved that it was added to Josephus, which is interesting. I don't know. It's just very interesting. Yeah. You can't really prove that Josephus wrote the Gospels, but or that the Romans made up Jesus, but it is compelling. It is interesting nonetheless. Titus was a decent emperor. His brother, not so much. And he did all these things, and he subdued the Jewish people, of course, but they were not subdued. And this wouldn't even be the end of the war. There would be a whole other siege of Masada after this that would really be the end of the war and the end of the conflict. And the people at Masada, they all killed themselves rather than being captured.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and it's actually a tradition for Jewish men to this day to go to the ancient site of Masada and proclaim, the Jewish military does this as well, to proclaim Masada shall never fall again. It's a very, Zionist sort of thing to do, And let's not get into Zionism and da-da-da-da-da. Because this story can honestly be used as Israeli propaganda. With things like this that people use and wield as propaganda, just remember that it was something that was really bad that happened. And it was made worse by people who couldn't see eye to eye no matter what. You know what I mean? There were impasses.
Yeah.
And that's what history is really supposed to teach you. It's not supposed to, like, make you thump your chest. You know what I mean? You're supposed to learn something from it. Not, I don't know. Because if it makes you want to thump your chest, then somebody's using it against you. And they want you to do something. Or sell you something.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that.
So that's the siege.
Yeah, that was something else.
Of Jerusalem is a bizarre.
It's a bummer.
It's a bummer. It's a bummer.
It's people at home. Sorry, this episode was a little late, but if you're listening to this down the road and a year from now, you wouldn't even know it was late.
You wouldn't even know.
It's just in the mix at this point. Yeah. But the people are waiting for it. We really appreciate your patience. So thank you so much. And again, you know what? I'm Christopher Whedon, and I am a history boy.
Nice.
And, I loved today's episode. And if you did too, there's so many ways that you can show your support for the podcast. You can go to historyboyspodcast@gmail.com and leave us a comment or suggestion for an episode.
Yeah.
So many ways you can do things. Thumbs up on the YouTube, 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
Yep.
Same deal with the old Spotify.
Yeah, they got stars on there now, right?
Yeah. Is it? Yeah. Okay, that's how they do it over there. Perfect. Yeah. And if you love us, feel free to get on that old Patreon. Kick us over a couple of bucks. $1 gives you access to the Discord. And I believe now $1 gets you a shout out. $5 gives you access to our Patreon only episodes, the Tyler Armstrong Project featuring Christopher Whedon, History Boys Presents, and then $10 a month gives you access to every piece of content we've ever made for Patreon, kind of unlimited buffet. So however you feel like showing your support, we love to see it, love to hear it, love to feel it. and most of all, the kind of the lurker listener who just wants to listen to the show. We like what you bring to the table too.
Yeah,
so keep on
absolutely.
doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I am Jerry Nash, your humble history boy. As always, thank you so much for listening. We love each and every one of our listeners. Our Patreon listeners keep the show going. We love each and every one of you. We hope you had a good holiday. We hope you have a good holiday season. We'll come back with one more this year, one in December, and that'll be it for us this year. And then we'll come back with our regular scheduled program.
We'll be hitting the ground running, gang.
Yeah, in January. That'll be fun. We got some good stuff planned for you. It's going to be great. Be good to each other for the rest of the year.
You assholes.
Yeah,
Come on.
be good. Be good to each other. Mr. Chris.
Love you, bye.